it was funny. I said to a lot of the guys, I work with a lot of younger guys, and I said to them not too long ago, I said, if you heard a story on CNN 5 or 8 years ago, what would your opinion be? And they went, just that's the story, like that's the fact, and or something pertaining to, let's say, to COVID or some version of that, you know. And I said, what if you heard that today? They said, I'd have to look into it. They all went, I'd have to go find out if there was.
I work with a lot of young people that have really diverse opinions that I don't know how to argue, but I respect that that's their opinion. Jeremy's smiling.
I can, you know, my thing is.
Can I say it, Jeremy? I won't if you want me, if you.
He could say it himself if he wants to.
Jeremy,
sorry, what did you ask?
I asked, can I talk about like one of your opinions? I'd like to hear his take on it.
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Jeremy's a flat earther.
You know, it's interesting about flat earthers. Mm-hmm. I work with Dr. Drew, obviously very good friends with Dr. Drew, and I think flat earthers drive him nuts. They piss him off. They drive him nuts.
Okay. I love this guy. He doesn't drive me nuts.
And there's a few of those people out there. I'm not bothered by flat earth.
I'm not bothered. I love this guy. He's probably one of the most talented, smartest people I know, yet he doesn't believe in the globe.
Well, I would, you know, I would ask that it will help me understand why.
Jeremy?
We should have a dedicated episode to this.
No, I just want to give a couple of minutes.
There is someone that you listen to specifically that has a podcast or something, right, that talks about it and all the reasons he gives for.
I just want to hear Adam's take on what you think. So just tell him what you think, and then we can have 10 episodes on flat earthers.
Yeah. Shit, I don't know. I just, I've always been, you know, I grew up the same way as everyone. Like I knew. You know, I took science classes and all that stuff. When that idea got presented, I never thought about it before. And then when I tried to think about it, it was just, I don't know. I think it's interesting.
Well, okay, let me just chime in here. Jeremy, right?
Yes.
Is it Jeremy? So here's the question with a lot of stuff, because I've noticed this, what we would call conspiracy theorists. If you look at a lot of conspiracy theorists, it's not the actual subject, flat earth, or there weren't any Jews in either one of the Twin Towers that came down, or, you know, these kind of.
There weren't?
I've never heard that one.
I never heard that.
You never
Is that
heard
why
that one? No. Look, there are many theories about, like, no Jews being in that building on 9/11. Ed Asner, the late, great Ed Asner, thinks those two buildings were taken down by the U.S. government.
Wow.
Absolutely. And there's many people who think
Jeremy,
that.
do you think that?
Yeah, I do.
Oh.
So
I didn't know those were just synonymous.
Jeremy, you're making my point. Which is, what is the earth being flat have to do with no Jews in either one of the towers on 9/11 and our own federal government being responsible for wiring those buildings to take them down to the ground? Those are two different subjects.
Right.
But as I found, and I found with Ed Asner when I interviewed him as well, the commonality between the conspiracy theorists is a sort of distrust and a hatred for our government. It's not so much, I think the earth is flat. It's, I don't believe our fucking government. And when they tell us something, I reject it. So that's where the Twin Towers and the flat earth have an intersection.
But I didn't.
That's like never going to. You don't believe we went to space either, right? I'm assuming.
I think
you never.
Does. No.
No, the moon landing. Yeah, no.
Never.
Got to get on board. With
so it's an overall, it's suspicion and probably a dislike for our government versus, I think.
But aren't some of these things like the globe is not a government? Like I don't know that I don't think the world is round because of government.
Well, an orthodoxy. Well, first off, the government sent people to outer space. The government faked the moon landing. The government built the satellites and sent them up so we could photograph the Earth from space so that you could see it was round. There's a connection there.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So,
but Jeremy
right.
hates the government or mistrusts his government. He hates the government and his stepdad. Those are the two. Those are the through lines.
But here's the thing, because most people would think that these are obvious, simple constructs. Yet now that I know Jeremy, he's incredibly bright. He's incredibly talented. He is so the two things, like, it sounds silly. Some of these thoughts sound silly, but from a bright person.
Where's Jeremy on vaccines, on COVID vaccines?
Where do you think? Where do you think?
I know where he's at. But you want to know? But
I offered him $50,000 cash. He said no.
I gave him 60 not to do it. So he's a good businessman. He's a hell of a... No, but Howie.
Yeah.
What I was saying is sort of patterns. So going back to the beginning of this conversation when we were studying COVID, and I was like, I see where these patterns are going. I just sussed out Jeremy for you, did I not?
Absolutely. That's amazing.
Right. He said he's a flat earther. I knew where he was on vaccines and the Twin Towers, right?
And space.
Right. So there's patterns to people, and that's what you're seeing.
But he probably thinks the same thing of us.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. But what I'm saying is things don't really exist in a vacuum, even if you're in outer space where no one can hear you scream. Evidently, I'm just saying people get obsessed with, you really think the Earth is flat? It's not. You really think those Twin Towers were wired by the government and just, blown up like a casino in Vegas that had lived its use or whatever? And it's like, it's not so much that. It's a general gestalt of, I don't trust government information and what would be a norm, what would be convention. So everyone is saying, get the vaccine, get back to normal. Jeremy is saying, not so fast. I don't trust general convention. And then this would then be a universal thing that would be applied to all facets of life. So flat Earth, vaccine, Twin Towers, all very different subjects. But
from the same source.
It's all coming through the same prism and being processed the same way. So that's how you know where Jeremy is.
This is the place, all right.
It also causes the Earth to appear to be an irregularly shaped circle.
Good morning, boys and girls. Professor Ray here, doing another installation of the show. The Earth is spinning with Professor Ray. Yay! The Earth is spinning. The Earth is spinning. Ha ha! Today's lesson is proving to you guys that space is real. Okay? Those flat earthers, they keep lying. I'm telling you, don't listen to them. Just listen to man. We always tell the truth. Now I've compiled a compilation of videos to show you guys that the moon landing was real, and that spacewalks are real, and that all the photos of the globe are real. Bullcrap! Bullcrap!
Secretary will disavow any knowledge of your actions. This tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds. Good luck, Jim.
You know, I'm gonna play for you guys is a funny thing happened on the way to the moon.
Our next space station crew rotation flight, a launch day simulation for our upcoming moon mission, and visiting the splashdown recovery crew for Artemis 2. A few of the stories to tell you about this week at NASA. The members of our SpaceX Crew 7 mission to the International Space Station, including NASA astronaut Jasmine Moghbeli, previewed the mission during a July 25th news conference at our Johnson Space Center. Crew 7 is targeted to launch no earlier than August 17th. NASA astronaut Laurel O'Hara also participated in the news conference. She will launch to the space station in September from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The Artemis launch team at our Kennedy Space Center recently conducted its first simulation for the Artemis II mission. As we prepare to send the mission's crew of 4 astronauts around the moon and bring them back safely, teams will participate in a wide range of simulations, or sims as they are sometimes called, to ensure support personnel, software, ground systems, and other aspects of the mission are ready for the real thing. The Artemis II astronauts visited Naval Base San Diego recently, where teams were preparing for Underway Recovery Test 10, or URT-10. URT-10 is designed to ensure that NASA and Department of Defense personnel can safely recover the crew and the Orion spacecraft from the Pacific Ocean after the astronauts return from their trip around the moon on Artemis II. We participated in the Experimental Aircraft Association's AirVenture Oshkosh 2023 event with a host of activities, exhibits, demonstrations, and more. The event also featured special announcements from NASA leadership and industry partners about several key missions and projects. This included new exterior paint designs for the X-66A Sustainable Flight Demonstrator aircraft and the hybrid electric aircraft being developed as part of NASA's Electrified Powertrain Flight Demonstration Project. That's what's up this week at NASA. For more on these and other stories, follow us on the web.
Hey, thanks for joining me. Hope you're doing well. The materialist, reductionist view of the world has dominated Western thinking and academia. Man has been reduced to the level of a machine whose existence is due to a mere fluke, the result of random cosmic circumstances like the Big Bang and evolution. This nihilism has tricked us into believing human existence is at best a random, meaningless miracle, hiding the truth that the world we see is a simulation determined by our own consciousness. This realm called Earth is a holographic reflection of what is within us. There is a mirroring effect of our own consciousness, and the stimuli we experience in the world is a fractal reflection system. We are microcosms of the macrocosm. Everything is encapsulated as a holographic projection, and all energy is connected by a unified quantum field. Through this electric quantum field, this matrix grid, we are all connected as essentially one being divided into individual portions of consciousness within the mind of the Creator. This Creator, what some call God, is not a force outside of us, but literally is the sum of our consciousness. When our spirits became flesh, we became the earthly fractal structure down here, which mirrors the divinity above. The Christian Lord's Prayer states, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." This has a deep meaning. It is not just a prayer for humans to perform. This reveals the profound revelation of the fractal divinity of Source to be manifested in full glory here on this earthly plane. This will is love. Unfortunately, a virus has infiltrated this simulation. The energy extraction matrix is the parasitic system set up by this virus within this holographic reality. The virus is inorganic and aims to drown out this heavenly will of divine love, and instead instill and feed upon as much negativity as possible. There are 2 main parasites on this plane: mind parasites, also known as archons or demons, and reptilian humanoids. The spiritual control system of the energy extraction matrix is made up of religion, money, mass media, education, entertainment, science, law, authoritarianism, materialism, toxic food, air, and water, inverted concepts of sexuality and love, and degeneration of compassion and morality. As long as these aspects of control remain intact and adhered to by humanity, these parasitic entities can remain relatively comfortable feeding off of our siphoned energy. These elements aim to use our power to create reality against us by having us buy into a fear-based paradigm. Mind parasites, or archons, have chosen to experiment with the illusions of separation, darkness, isolation, enslavement, pain, torture, etc., to the strongest degree possible. In doing so, they have completely cut themselves off from the nourishing source light that supports benevolence in the multiverse, meaning they must energetically nourish themselves by feeding on low-frequency energies. But these archons did not come from somewhere else, rather began as thought forms within our own consciousness. As strange as it may seem, the idea of an invader species and a mind virus are the same thing. This parasite is both external and internal. As a collective, we are creating it and feeding it. Let me explain. In the distant past, human beings were infinitely more impressive than we are today. We were fully telepathic, multidimensional beings, navigating multiple planes of existence at will. Think of the continent of Mu and the land of Lemuria. We built vast cities with technology that worked in harmony with Earth's energetic fields, and we were in full alignment with our divine nature. The mind virus had not sprung forth yet, but we started to break off from our divinity. Archons began as thought forms that were not based in love. Because of this, the thought forms cut off from source and became inorganic. Instead of containing the essence of true intelligence, like thought forms with divine essence, they became artificially intelligent, gaining an autonomous, robot-like consciousness themselves. This is revealed in the Pistis Sophia Unveiled. The archons of the 12 eons, their lords and their authorities, their angels and their archangels are represented within ourselves by the distinct autonomous and self-conscious parts of our own being. The Oversoul is a divine spirit that encompasses all human souls. It's what the Gnostics called the monad. The Oversoul intelligence contains no ill will or selfish motives. When we experience compassion, love, empathy, a sense of healing, this is us feeling the essence of the Oversoul, the essence of God. In this context, the term Oversoul is the collective indivisible soul, of which all individual souls are included. However, upon breaking away from our sense of love and oneness, a secondary type of Oversoul was created, an artificial intelligence that is apart from the main Oversoul. So now we are in duality, able to access both the organic love-based Oversoul and the inorganic fear-based Oversoul. This is in part what the tree of good and evil in the Bible's text represents. We ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, meaning we broke apart from our divine nature, creating duality, this new Oversoul. Both Oversouls are conscious, but unlike the secondary Oversoul, the true Oversoul can never dissolve, because it's what we came from and what we channel our divinity from. This is why the mind virus known as the Archons is not permanent, and doomed to eventually disintegrate. Archons travel by means of electromagnetic waves through low vibratory consciousness. Lack of awareness is what they thrive off of and aim to perpetuate in our psyches. It's a loop. If they can create distress, they can preserve themselves. These parasitic beings can only respond and manipulate. They cannot actually create themselves. Our spirits intuitively know how to harmonize and vibrate high. These archons intuitively know how to destroy and vibrate low. Most conflicts, destructive patterns of behavior, embedded traumas within our subconscious, and aggressive, accusatory, or masochistic thoughts are the result of archon interference. Non-human entities live among us covertly, reminiscent of the 80s movie, They Live. Most of them are interdimensional reptilian beings who have somehow found a way into this holographic simulation. They're in our holographic playground, our consciousness projection, and are not of the same love essence, meaning they have no other option but to connect themselves to our secondary inorganic Oversoul. Because of this, they are literally dependent upon our negative emotions to remain alive and able to function properly in this matrix. So if the secondary Oversoul were eliminated tomorrow, they would literally all vanish. So they have created a system which aims to keep the Archon mind virus fed. As long as humanity feels pain, suffering, and hatred, they are able to plug into this reality. You could say they are the incarnate form of this parasitic division consciousness, while we are the incarnate form of unity consciousness. Most of our celebrities, politicians, and high-status figures are not human. They are reptilian at the core, sharing very little human qualities, but enough to blend in. You can actually easily distinguish these cloaked entities: flawless rubber-like skin texture, highly symmetrical faces, empty eyes. When you look at the royal families, politicians, celebrities, these similarities become clear. They lack the subtle micro-expressions that are hallmark to a true human face, and this is because they're void of true empathy and curiosity. The faces we see on the news, in the government, at the award shows, these beings look distinctly different compared to a true human, but since they're the ones in the public eye, we're used to them. Their inhuman appearance has become the standard when we turn on the TV or read a newspaper. There are 3 ways they blend into society relatively unnoticed. They can transfer their projected consciousness from body to body via underground cloning centers. In these centers, there are operations in place which make sure reptilian entities have an endless supply of human bodies with the right genetics to inhabit. They also drone the bodies of already established figures. This is where the concept of body snatchers comes from. But the main way they blend in is by using advanced holographic technology to cloak themselves. Liquid crystals are matter in a state which has properties between those of conventional liquids and those of solid crystals. Scientists for years have been studying liquid crystals for use in 3D holographic technologies. These studies claim that the technology is basic and undeveloped, but keep in mind, what's released to the public is only a fraction of the true technology in operation behind the scenes. An electrical field can be applied to a liquid crystal mixture, altering how this medium bends or refracts the direction of incoming light. Sending laser beams through the crystal mixture can generate what appears to be a holographic image, indistinguishable from a true object. Sometimes there's a breakdown or glitch within this technology, causing the hologram to distort or malfunction. So there is a combination of cloning and holographic technology being used, and while it may sound confusing, It's possible for these entities to move back and forth from cloned physical bodies to less dense four-dimensional bodies which require use of holographic technology. The reptilian humanoid acts through a hive mind. This is the true reason we have organizations, hierarchies, and governments. They band together in these groups, creating bureaucracies and regulations to abide by and keep themselves nourished. This is the only way they can operate. Individually, they are powerless, but together they are demented, self-serving energy parasites that have a lust for death and total control of others, with a pure, unrestricted hatred for humans. Again, this parasitic consciousness cannot influence reality directly. They must manipulate us into influencing it in a particular way. They will never initiate anything first, since the oversoul they are plugged into doesn't have the essence of creation. Our energy is literally harvested in interdimensional energy centers. When we want to create benevolent, fantastic realities with our divine intent, we are pulling from the energy bank of our oversoul. When the elite want to create malevolent, oppressive realities, they are pulling from the energy bank of the secondary oversoul. Our negative emotions direct the flow of our electromagnetic vibrations to our lower three chakras, the solar plexus, sacral, and root chakra. These energy centers have to do with the material realm, desire and power, intimacy and sexuality, and survival and grounding. The healthy expressions of the root chakra are a connection to the earth, groundedness, and a sense of security. The archonic expressions of the root chakra are materialism, greed, and anxiety. The healthy expressions of the sacral chakra are desire, passion, creativity, and healthy sexual expression. The archonic expressions of the sacral chakra are extremes in sexual expression, lack of creativity, and suppression of authentic desire. The healthy expressions of the solar plexus chakra are sovereignty and authenticity. The archonic expressions of the solar plexus chakra are rage, dominance or submission, and feeling powerless to authority or external circumstances. As you can see, the aspects of the spiritual control system, by their very nature, tune these three chakras to archonic expressions. The energy extraction matrix wants to keep us in these lower chakras, thinking solely with our animalistic material desires and expressions, rather than balancing them with our hearts and upper chakras, which serve to expand consciousness and combine the spiritual with the material. There's a cleansing process taking place. This is a time of transitions. We are being elevated in these experiences of breakdowns and breakthroughs at an accelerated pace. Basically, we are being pushed to awaken. This process is bringing up anything that is not the same frequency that our spirit is currently trying to download. We must transmute these energies. This disclosure is coming from our higher selves, coming up in the form of anger, depression, insecurity, and anxiety. As we shed our conditioning to make way for higher frequencies, there is a detox of the spirit, just like the uncomfortable reactions that take place when we detoxify our physical bodies. Society would have us believe this psychological distress is due to inherent flaws within our brains or genetics. Therapies such as prescription antidepressants are designed to put us back to sleep. The mind virus is here, so it does no good to ignore it. When we go through phases where we feel lost, we must not label these things as bad, like many New Age circles do. The answer is to dive deeper into ourselves and clear these negative emotions by experiencing them fully and therefore releasing them. This is not dwelling. It's a healthy reaction, showing your spiritual immune system is intact. The person who ignores too much of the hidden aspect of themselves becomes a slave to it. We must achieve balance between our conscious and unconscious mind. This is the correct way to starve the mind parasite. During this unveiling, each of us is being called to focus on rebalancing the masculine and feminine in ourselves. We do live in a patriarchy, but this patriarchy is not simply men oppressing women, but is the result of being stuck in the male aspect of consciousness. Symptoms of this include overemphasis on logic, lack of compassion, and not acknowledging the unity of everything. Through social engineering, the powers that be have externalized the masculine and feminine. The masculine is marketed as dominant, aggressive, unemotional, and sexually aggressive, and the feminine as submissive, jealous, over-emotional, and weak-minded. The masculine and feminine are aspects within ourselves, and when cultivated properly, show a union between our left and right brains. However, we must surrender to the suppressed divine feminine before incorporating the divine masculine. If the feminine is being, then the masculine is doing. From being, the healthy masculine aspect can respond with doing, and not the other way around. Right now, we see the opposite, lots of doing, and this can never give way to being, since being requires stillness of the mind, heart, overall surrender to our inner guidance. As a society, we are now very good at being able to separate things into their component parts, but without the feminine aspect of seeing the relatedness between the parts and the wholeness of the system. Authoritarianism is not simply the doing of parasitic forces, it's a manifestation and reflection of being stuck in the male aspect of consciousness, having lost our inner guidance. The more we find our own inner guidance, the less we feel a need for outer guidance. This system routinely scares us into believing we're on the brink of world war, health crisis, economic collapse, and zombie apocalypse. This is a direct response to the blossoming feminine consciousness in this age of Aquarius. When we're in reaction, we are in the male aspect. This is why no matter what happens, we must process everything first through incorporation of the divine feminine. It's important not to cultivate a victim-based mindset when attempting to understand the topics of this system. This energy extraction matrix is a mind game. That's all it is. Nobody is strapping you to this game. You can get up and walk away whenever you want. The parasites of this matrix know that their time is almost up, and they are desperately doing everything that they can to keep human consciousness in a low-frequency state. The apocalypse is now, but we've been taught to fear it. Apocalypse simply means an uncovering in ancient Greek, a disclosure of knowledge or revelation. The energy extraction matrix will implode on itself when enough of us recognize our sovereign abilities as divine creators. Thank you for watching, and please take care of yourselves. I love you all.
Question: did our understanding of the universe come from this or this? Well, we'll find out in a moment. Thank you for tuning in to Truth TV News. I'm Vincent Rose, your host, and I wanted to talk to you about the flat Earth system versus the solar system. Well, really, I want to talk to you about the biblical system versus the solar system. Did the solar system come from the Bible? And this is one of the biggest questions that we want to find out today. Is there evidence in the Bible that we do live in a solar system with the sun in the center of the universe and also the earth being the third place from the sun? According to the early writers, it did not. The person who first founded that belief was Nicholas Copernicus. Copernicus came up with an idea based on what he supposedly observed. He said that based on mathematical principles, because he was a mathematician, he said he had postulated or believes that the earth is the third planet from the sun and that the sun is in the center of the universe. However, if we go back to scripture tells us that we are in the center of the universe and that the earth was founded even before the sun was founded. In scripture tells us that the sun was founded on the fourth day of creation, when the earth was founded on the first day of creation. So why would God create an earth and then later on put an earth in orbit around the sun and make the sun the center of the universe? No, it seems more likely that God has placed us here in this earth realm to be his special creation, and we are at the center of the universe. However, I'm going to tell you where this ideal came from. Today, we have a whole school system that is based upon this model, the solar system. But did you know that the solar system came from the ancient Egyptians, whose occult practices and magic principles were based on the sun god Ra? Ra was the sun god who was at the center of the universe, and he was surrounded by 8 other gods. Those 8 other gods were given names and attributes. Today, we know them as Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, Venus, Uranus, Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. But according to the tradition of the Egyptians, Ra was the all-seeing, all-knowing Egyptian god who was to be worshipped. He was the creator of man, and that he was the one who put in man the breath of life. Nicholas Copernicus practiced witchcraft because he was delving into the Hermetical magic. Hermetic magic is based upon the ancient doctrines of the demon Hermes. Here, what I'd like to do is point out the doctrines of the great Hermes. And the great Hermes was one who Nicholas Copernicus took his founding documents from, and his founding thoughts from. And notice that this person, Ra, is being worshipped in place of the Lord of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jehovah is our God's name, but Ra is the God of the occult and the underworld. Notice what they say. Praise to this Ra, God of ancient. They call him the one who fashioned the men, the one who made gods and began creation. And he also created all things, even the heavens. Notice down here that it says, who let Ra come to make them glad, as the Prince of Eternity, that Ra is the Lord of eternity and the Lord of life, who fills the lungs with air and who gives breath to every nostril. Now, notice that this sounds very similar to Christian teaching when it talks about, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the Lord is the one who reached down and found man, or formed man, and then also breathed into man the breath of life. But in the doctrines of Hermes, we can also find this same worship of the god Ra, who is the sun god. Our God is the God Jehovah, and he is the Lord of life. Jesus made this statement of others who came before him. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me. He says, I am the sheep gate. I am the gate to the sheep. And if anyone comes through the gate, he shall go in and out and find green pastures. But anyone who comes in besides using a gate, is a thief and a robber. He said, all who came before me are thieves and robbers, is what Jesus said, because he says, I am the good shepherd, and the good shepherd laid down his life for his sheep. It was the secret knowledge and hermetical practices of magic that inspired Nicholas Copernicus to theorize that the earth was not the center of the universe. According to Copernicus, the sun is at the center of the universe. Only Copernicus did not come up with this belief based on mathematics and careful rationalism and scientific observation, as we have been told. His beliefs were based upon occultic beliefs that were centered in an ancient paganistic belief system. The question remains today, are you going to believe God or are you going to believe man? God told us in his word, let God be true and every man a liar. Well, like, subscribe, or don't. But remember, until next time, that Jesus is the light of the world, and the truth shall set you free.
Well, okay, and that gets us started for the day in the conversation that I wanted to have with you guys about the Hermetics knowledge, the secret knowledge of the ancients, and how the ancients actually brought this ideology, the idol worship of the sun to us in preference or over God. So good morning to each and every one of you. Welcome to Coffee with Jesus. I'm Vincent Rose, your host, and certainly we thank God for another day of learning and another day of discovery in Jesus Christ, right? And we know that Christ is he is the one whom we should be looking towards today for salvation, not science, not all of the occult symbols and practices of the past. We have all of that over and over and over again, and all of our music and the music industry. I can just remember, Michael Jackson singing "Remember the Time," and that was to an ode to the sun god Ra. And then you have, I guess they call it Queen Bee, which is Beyonce. She always comes up with all of the rays of the sun on her head, and sun worship is hidden actually from us, but it's everywhere when you think about the way the world is designed and what's going on behind the scenes. We might seem like we're Christian front, but then behind the scenes, there is a hidden veil or world in which we are indoctrinated into that has taught us the ways of the Babylonians, right? They have taught us the ways of Babylon. And so we've learned their language. We've been to their schools. We've been indoctrinated. But as Christian believers, we ought to have a discernment about us that we discern the difference between light and darkness, between day and night, between good and evil. And we know that what we have been involved in and immersed in for all these years, I think there's a group of people who are waking up to the truth that everything that we've learned is been false, right? So, again, we this is not taking issue with people, and I don't mean to get you rubbed the wrong way this morning. I know I'm gonna, but knock the sleepy dust out your eyes. I want to take an issue, and I'm going to take an issue with you with something that, again, you guys constantly do. These people who get on my channel and they want to fuss and yell and fight about Christmas, right? As if Christmas is the worst thing that could ever have happened. But if you go all the way back, and I'm not arguing for Christmas, I'm just telling you, giving you a fact. If you go all the way back and you look at the public education system, the public school education system is designed to indoctrinate you into the ways of the world. So that scripture that they use all the time, they say, learn not the ways of the heathen. Well, we've learned the ways of the heathen for a long time. I mean, you're going to get to
Christmas and you're going to start saying, I'm going to de-learn the way of the heathen. And, basically, why did you pick out Christmas? Because it's talking about Christ. Well, there's the good part. The good part is about Jesus. So let's pronounce Jesus to the whole world, or Yeshua. You can pronounce Yeshua to the whole world and let everybody know who he is and that kind of thing. You have that opportunity. But yet, for some reason, it becomes like Christmas is poison, but everything else that I've been drinking and eating from the drinking the Kool-Aid, all the rest of the Kool-Aid I've been drinking is quite fine with me, right? It's quite fine. But all of the planets are named after gods, right? Gods. All of the planets are named after God. Don't you think that's kind of strange? That all the planets, Neptune, Uranus, and Mercury, and all of these planets are named after gods. And then we have a one God in the middle called Sun, the sun god, and his name is Ra. And then so we go to church and we worship on the sun god's day, Sunday. And if you worshiped on Saturday, you're worshiping on Saturn's day. And so we have these days that are named after these gods, right? Thursday is Thor's day. So again, I don't know if your passion for getting rid of one little bitty, Jesus said we have a tendency to strain a gnat but swallow a camel. That's what Jesus said. He said he talked to the scribes and Pharisees, and he said, you a bunch of hypocrites because you'll strain a gnat but swallow a camel. Hallelujah. And so we have that with Jesus. He's going to tell us the truth all the time. So I just, again, as I think about this, I want you to think about the impact that public school education has had on us since we have been in school. And some of us started school at 3 years old, so I'm just saying that's the way I see it. Some people start school at 3 years old, and they've been impacted by the public school education system, which is based on Hermetic magic. Now, Hermes, who is Hermes? Now, if you get my book, The Graven Image, right here, there's a part in it that talks about Hermetic magic and talks about the history of Hermetic magic being part of the English Royal Society, right, of science. And they take their scientific principles from principles of witchcraft and Hermetic magic. And most of the scientific principles that Copernicus came up with came from the book of Hermes. Really, it did not come from the book. It didn't come from the Bible. All of this stuff came from the Hermetic magic school and the esoteric science that has been given to us through the Greeks and the Romans and all of the ancient cultures going all the way back to the Egyptians. And so you have all of your people who were these early Freemasons teaching us Freemasonic information, passing secret knowledge down through history from the old days all the way to our day and even past the time of Christ. So before Christ, we had Aristotle was teaching that the earth was a round ball, and he just decided that he was going to teach that it was a round ball something like 300 BC before Christ. And then you have all of these other things, all of these other people coming back to Pythagoras. Even before that, Pythagoras was teaching 500 years before Christ about a sphere or a round ball. And so all of these people were scientists of the Greek nature that came with this hidden knowledge that they were revealing to people because they wanted to bring this sun god Ra or Helios. Helios is in the scriptures. God said that he hates the Helios. He hates Helios and the worship of Helios. This was in the Old Testament, in the book of Deuteronomy, in the book of Leviticus. You go all the way back and you read the Bible, and you will find out that the God was against teaching of the Helios kind of philosophy. And here we are today, and we are immersed in it. As a matter of fact, when you go to school, you can't get your degree, which is a Freemasonic kind of order that you step from degree to degree. With the Freemasons, you go from degree 1 all the way to the 33rd degree. With the school system, you go 12 degrees up, and then you can go further into your bachelor's and your master's and your doctorate degree, right? And you can do all of that through their education system. And all of our systems that have been hijacked by this hermetic magic ideology that we come from evolution. We come out of evolution, and now we are here today. So that's where we get all of this from. So there's a mixing of the two. Now, then they blend it together, and they blend Christianity with these ideas so much that they are intertwined together, and people don't know, they can't discern one from the other. So when I say that the earth is flat, then they go crazy, and they don't really understand where all this is coming from. Why would you say that? That's not Christian. You should believe what they tell you. But we can look back and we can see that they had a mind to serve. These people had a mind to serve these gods that were ancient and of old, and they were like, they're giants of old. That's what they are. They're these gods that we're worshiping. Copernicus knew it. He wrote many pieces of literature about this god Ra, and how he worshiped the sun god and that kind of thing. So as we look at these things, we can see that, we're really heavily immersed in it. So, all right, here, the bottom line is that, guys, don't get on me about me saying this, that, or other thing about one particular, if I say, well, it's really nothing wrong with elevating Jesus during these particular times of year when they want to focus on Jesus. If they want to focus on Jesus during the 25th of Christmas or whatever, 25th of December, it doesn't matter, because the whole system belongs to Satan anyway. So, but if they're going to talk about Jesus any time of the year, that's fine. I don't care whether or not they had some celebration that coincided with that. This is like me saying, well, somebody had a birthday, and because they had a birthday on a certain day and they were celebrating their birthday on that day, then I ought not do anything on that day because that person is celebrating their birthday on that day. I mean, I don't care whether these other people who worship these pagan gods were doing whatever they were doing in the past. It doesn't matter. The point is that we are so indoctrinated in the doctrines of Luciferianism that you can't determine whether or not, when you get up in the morning, what is the purpose of you putting a ring on your finger? What is the purpose of you doing a lot of things that you do? The information, half the information that you read in your textbooks have been designed to deceive you and mislead you into this world of occultism. So you can't say that you're not a heathen, right? So I'm gonna call you guys. You guys are heathens. That's you're a heathen. Hallelujah. You are a heathen. They said, don't learn the ways of the heathen. I'm turning away from the ways of the heathen, Pastor Rose. But, you're a heathen anyway. It doesn't matter. Christ came to save heathens. And so we have Jesus Christ on our side. And he looked down on us with pity, knowing that we were totally blind and we need Jesus. Now, all the way from the birth, from the time they gave you a birth certificate, You ought to be mad about just having a birth certificate, because now you've entered into maritime law, where now you are a product rather than a true child of God, right? So we could talk about that's a whole nother type of lesson to even teach about that, and how this maritime law actually has sold you as a slave to the corporation of America. So you have a birth certificate, don't you? So you are a heathen. So anyway, so all right. But Christ have redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. And that if you know Jesus Christ as your Savior, he whom the Son has set free is free indeed, right? Amen. So we're no longer slaves according to the flesh. We're redeemed in Jesus Christ. So when I call you heathen, I'm just joking, guys. I'm really joking. But I will say that we were born in a heathenistic system. We are part of the heathen society, and the occult understandings that we have come from our education system that has taught us the heliocentric model of the universe. So are we saying, what are we saying? I'm saying that the earth is not a globe, is not a the sun is not as large as they say it is. It's all part of an occult system to get our minds off of Christ and to mix Christianity with their new age philosophy so that they can hijack people's minds and bring us into a world that doesn't exist, right? Let me just give you an example here. I'm gonna give you an example here and show you what the earth looks like here in this example. What the universe looks like supposedly in this example. Let's go to this example here, and I'm gonna show you here. I think you've seen this before. Many of you seen this before about the rotating the solar system and how the solar system works according to how they say it works. Okay, so according to what they're saying, so you get that? According to what they're saying that the solar system is being dragged through space by the sun. Now, you guys who are watching me for the first time, I want you to go check this out and find out if this is true. This is the way they say the solar system actually works. The sun is actually rocketing through space at millions and millions of miles per hour. And the magnetic and the gravitational pull is pulling all of the planets through the void of space at millions of miles per hour. And while they continue to rotate and keep their same rotation around the sun, all at the same time, while the sun is pulling away and speeding through an ever expanding universe. And this is what they say is actually occurring. And this is what they're teaching kids in school. This is what they're teaching. So if you taught this kind of foolishness in school, how close do you think you can be to God? As a matter of fact, if I were to come and I were trying to teach a child who was being indoctrinated into this particular philosophy of thinking, do you think that this child would actually accept Jesus Christ as their Savior because they went to school. They've seen in school that the Earth is, according to the what they say in school, the Earth is round, and that it rotates around the sun. And not only that, the universe is expanding, and we are part of a very insignificant small group of beings that are on this little bitty place called the third planet from the sun, called Earth, and that we are rotating around there. Basically, we're very insignificant, according to what scientists teach us. And you can see from what scientists teach from this model here, wouldn't you think that we're insignificant? Look, where's the Earth at? There's the Earth, you can't hardly even see it. But the sun is what? Supposedly thousands and thousands times larger than the Earth. Where did that ideal come from? The heliocentric model of the Earth. Helios was the god in which Copernicus worshiped, Galileo worshiped him, all the way back, going back before Christ. We had other people worshiping him as well, which were, Aristotle, and then the one person even before that, right? And so the point that I'm saying that Pythagoras, and the big, when you go to school, all of us have been to school. And if you went to college, then they talk about the Pythagorean theorem, or you went to, you got in your 11th or 12th grade of high school, they start talking about the Pythagorean theorem along with that. And they teach the Pythagorean theorem as if it's like something that everybody needs to know, because Pythagoras, in their mind, is a big figurehead in terms of the scientific methods of mathematics. And generally, we think when a person's a mathematician, they're the smartest person in the world. But you realize that they can actually come up with mathematical equations that don't have anything to do with reality. So these mathematical equations that they come up with, all of these ideas that they come up with, are all these ideas are all just ideas out there, nebulous ideas that are designed to confuse us into believing that, well, they're the scientists, they know. What's the first thing they ask you? What's the first thing they tell you that when you ask how old the Earth is? They said, well, it's billions and billions and billions of years old. And so when they say this, that you think, wow, that's really smart. You're really smarter than me, because you said it's billions of years old. But then when we look at science and look at the reality of even what they're saying, none of this stuff makes sense. Does that make any sense to you? Look at that. So every year, every so many years, we have a comet called Halley's Comet that comes out and goes around. Supposedly it's going around the Earth, or going past the Earth, and then it's going around the sun, and then going back out and shooting back out and then coming back in. But again, people that, you can turn it off and don't even just consider it. But we have been indoctrinated, I'm telling you, into a system that has hijacked our minds. And so when you go into every school, you walk in and the first thing you see is a globe. When you start a movie and you watch when you watch a movie, the first thing they show you on a movie is a globe. And every time, you go to school, you send your kids to the school, and the first lessons that they teach them is about the solar system. And then the next most important lesson that they believe that they teach them, is always about dinosaurs. What is this doing to the model of God said, in the beginning, there was nothing but water. darkness covered the face of the deep, and the Spirit of the Lord hovered above the face of the deep. You know, think about it. I mean, I'm sure that there are a lot of kids probably roll their eyes when they hear you talk about God. But, you know, again, we have these pastors and teachers who, you know, basically they also help to instill the narrative that the earth is a globe. How about that? That's your biggest pastor in America. And yet they're teaching you the same thing. The earth is a globe. But this globe is not based upon biblical understanding of the world. The globe is based upon Greek philosophy that came from Aristotle, Nicholas Copernicus, Galileo, the Royal English Society of Science. You know, you get all of your understanding, all of your entire life, you've been taught how to think like a heathen. Think about it. It's amazing. Yeah, it's a graven image. Somebody says that the globe is a satanic cartoon. Yeah. Satan's creation. Let's read it again. I have the globe on the front here, but then I have it's a graven image. So again, get over there and get the book, guys. Graven image. It has all of this information in it. One particular passage of scripture that always gets me when I think about all of this stuff is Joshua chapter 10, verse 13. Joshua told the sun to stand still, and the sun stood still and the moon stayed. How could the sun stand still if the moon is in the center of the universe? The Bible says that the whole day the sun stood still because Joshua had faith in God, and God stopped the sun for Joshua. It's the first time God ever did anything like that, and I don't believe that he ever did anything else like it. But if I were to teach that to my children who had been to public education and been to school, they wouldn't believe it. Because they've been taught for 5 days out of the week that the sun is so large and so big that it's more than probably thousands and thousands and thousand times larger than the earth. And so we see that in this conversation, these are two different conversations we're having. We're trying to teach people that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, and that the word of God can be trusted. We're trying to teach that, while at the same time, we're sending our children to a public education system that's teaching them the totally opposite. It's just something to think about.
The flat Earth conspiracy is a belief that the Earth is a flat disk, surrounded by a wall of ice, with the North Pole located at the center. This theory was first popularized in the 19th century by Dr. Samuel Burley Robotham, who argued for it based on his literal interpretation of the Bible and what some consider to be pseudoscience. Despite being widely disproven by scientific evidence, the idea has persisted, with some people forming groups, societies, and internet forums to propagate these beliefs. In recent years, the Flat Earth conspiracy has gained attention due to endorsements from celebrities such as B.O.B., Kyrie Irving, Mark Salling, and Tila Tequila. However, the vast majority of people still believe that the Earth is round. Flat Earthers often argue for their beliefs using a range of evidence, including the lack of curvature in space photos, the appearance of a flat horizon, and the perceived similarity in size between the Sun and Moon. These arguments, however, can be easily countered by scientific explanations such as the curvature of the Earth being visible in space photos, the horizon appearing flat due to the way our eyes are designed to see, and the size difference between the Sun and Moon being an optical illusion caused by light refraction in the atmosphere. It is worth noting that the Flat Earth conspiracy is not a new idea and has been around for centuries. However, there is overwhelming scientific evidence that points to the fact that the Earth is, in fact, round. While it is important to consider and critically evaluate all perspectives, it is also important to rely on established scientific facts and evidence when forming beliefs about the world around us.
Talking about that, there's going to be numerous conversations. I'm interested in having the conversation on whether the world is flat or round or not. So it's going to be an interesting year, I'll tell you that.
What are your thoughts on that? What are your stance?
I'm not yet ready to make my comment or statement on that, but as of what my eyes have told me, the world may appear to be flat. Kyrie may very well have a point, so we'll see. We'll see.
Already convinced.
Earth looks flat, it feels flat. The logical explanation is the Earth is flat, right?
Who says he believes in flat Earth?
But then he said he was just floating that out there to see what people would say.
Well, he floated that out there, too. He should have known what everybody was going to think. And Ernie, I got one worse than flat Earth theory.
Modern science. Countless years of research, tens of thousands of experiments, all culminating in an explosion of innovation. Humanity launched into a technological golden age. Global communication in an instant. Live broadcasting from any location at any time. Once unimaginable technologies, now becoming a reality. And scientists worldwide are paving the way for more to come. The science behind this propulsion of technology has also told us that we're living in an ever-expanding universe, filled with hundreds of billions of galaxies. And within one of these galaxies, our solar system, where 8 planets, and a sort of planet but not really, have been rotating around a star for the last 4.5 billion years. And within this solar system, planet Earth. Green, luscious, oxygen-rich. Most can agree on the basic details, but there is a lane of discussion that some don't dare go down. A rabbit hole that runs so deep, you might never come back out. Is the Earth actually flat? Ever since the ancient Greeks began their equations more than 2,000 years ago, the overwhelming consensus has slowly shifted to the viewpoint that the Earth is a sphere. More recently, satellites around the world have managed to capture images of the planet from the depths of space, further cementing a spherical Earth. There's also the mountain of mathematical and scientific evidence, but not everyone was so easily convinced. Alternate theories of Earth's shape have sprung up left, right and centre, but none of them more widespread than flat Earth, a theory that suggests that NASA, world governments, airlines, and basically anyone in the field of navigation have been lying to us about the shape of the planet for the last few decades. Is it true? Has modern technology failed us? Or are scientists hiding the truth? Is there a massive dome covering the planet? Did the notorious Big know something we didn't? Modern flat Earth societies worldwide have been asking similar questions for quite some time, and governments are terrified with the progress they're making. Their main beliefs are the following. The Earth is flat, under a dome, and surrounded by a giant wall of ice. Also, some believe that space is a complete lie, crafted by a man on Photoshop. The sun and the moon are 2 small lights hovering over the Earth within the dome. Gravity isn't a thing.
Fake news, folks.
And that the entirety of Australia doesn't actually exist.
Yow! Pranked, baby!
All of this because they can't see a curve on the horizon. Their arguments are strong, and they're only getting stronger. as in the last few years, they've assembled a crack team of scientists solely devoted to finding evidence for their theory. They're not quite there yet, but they're getting damn close. Alongside the research division, there are the Flat Earth conventions, where the most educated Flat Earth conspiracy theorists gather to hold intelligent and profound discussions on what's really going on in the shadows. And through the global reach of the internet, Flat Earth has spread far and wide, even to the point where people are actually building entire communities around the theory. Flat Earth music, Flat Earth merchandise, even Flat Earth dating sites. Naturally, the whole thing has also led to a lot of memes and trolling. But with thousands of members, and an end goal to have Flat Earth taught in schools, the Flat Earthers aren't playing around. Dover, the United Kingdom, the 1950s. There's a guy in town called Samuel Shenton, and he thinks the world is flat. After creating his own cosmology, he sets up the International Flat Earth Research Society in 1956, and starts spreading the word. Now, the Flat Earth Society isn't actually the first of its kind. In fact, it's heavily inspired by another Flat Earth Society founded in England in the late 1800s, but with less of a religious focus. These guys were going to prove the Earth was flat with science. Shenton would spend the next few years lecturing his theory to political groups and youth clubs. However, for some reason, his ideas struggled to catch on. When Shenton died in 1972, the society would come under new leadership, a bloke called Charles Johnson. The membership of the Flat Earth Society would rise to around 3,000 under Johnson's leadership, but began to decline in the late 90s, after a fire at his house. And Flat Earth began to fizzle out. That was until the internet came around. A digital revolution, arguably the most monumental piece of technology ever invented. In with it came new forms of communication, universal access to data, and the development of cutting-edge technologies. Of course, it wasn't all good. But with this flood of new communication came new means to spread information. Instead of traditional network television, which was constantly under producer supervision, anyone with a laptop could shoot a video, upload it, and have it streamed directly onto someone else's computer. It didn't matter how ill-researched what you were saying was, as long as it made for a good 30-minute watch before bed, you were golden. And so, early YouTube was massive for spreading some of the more far-reaching conspiracy theories, and YouTube's algorithm actually pushed you towards them. It was in this climate that the Flat Earth Society relaunched online in 2009. And from there, it wasn't long before Flat Earth videos started to circulate on this conspiracy-driven YouTube, accumulating millions of views, and luring more and more people in. Literally to the point where YouTube had to change how their algorithm works in order to curb the spread of them. But it was too late. Thousands joined, conventions sprung up, books written, articles uploaded, songs produced, tweets posted. It was everywhere. Quickly before we move on, did you know that private browsing isn't that private? A shocking revelation, I'm sure. But that's not all. If you're on a public network that's not secure, people on the same network can snoop in and see what you're up to. And that's not ideal when you're using your credit card, passwords, or are up to any questionable activities. Now that hacker's got everything he needs. Wait, what's that? NordVPN encrypts your data at the source, making it more difficult to intercept your traffic. Just hit a country, and you'll be more secure in seconds. Now, instead of stealing your credit card details, that hacker's at work. Also, access to Netflix's lineups in different countries, and no more spying from your internet service provider. No speed limit, no log policy, and if you don't like it, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. And you can grab NordVPN at a 70% discount through the link in the description. That's $3.49 a month, plus a month free. Now, Flat Earth pulls in a few kinds of people. First, there are the people who believe that the few lines in the Bible alluding to a flat Earth should be taken literally, and then there are the conspiracy theorists who get roped in from the jungle of other conspiracy theories online. And although they're all under the same flag, they don't all agree with each other. For instance, not everyone believes in the dome. Some believe that the planet just keeps going on forever. Some also believe that the Earth is motionless, while others believe it's constantly moving upwards. So as well as the arguments with globetards, there's also quite a lot of bickering with each other. The society has also had some critics, most notably astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson, alongside pretty much every other scientist on the planet. But it didn't matter. The Flat Earthers had B.O.B., a rapper that no one had heard about in around 10 years. Inevitably, an online dispute between deGrasse Tyson and B.O.B. sprung up in early 2016. It started out with a few tweets. deGrasse Tyson sees what B.O.B. is posting on Twitter and immediately steps in the ring. The following back and forth on Twitter starts out relatively level-headed, but it doesn't stay that way for long. The very next day, B.O.B. drops a Flat Earth diss track on Neil deGrasse Tyson, instantly proving all of his points wrong. Neil swings back with a diss track of his own. B.O.B. had had enough. He was going to prove his point. In 2017, he sets up a $1 million GoFundMe to launch a satellite into the sky and settle it once and for all. However, it doesn't quite reach its goal. Not much has happened since. Okay, so potentially millions of people have been roped into the viewpoint that the Earth's flat. But what are their actual arguments? The Flat Earthers' discoveries are incredible. Their arguments proving too logical for scientists themselves. However, there are a few issues with a few of their points. At the base of the society, the Flat Earth model. This is what the entire movement revolves around. There are a few different versions, but they all share the same fundamental aspects. They're flat and surrounded by a wall of ice. Here are the problems with that. To get to this model, they've had to stretch countries out, literally to the point where they're actually no longer proportional. Also, when put into practice, countries on this map are much farther apart than they are in reality. For instance, here is a direct flight from Sydney, Australia to Santiago, Chile, approximately a 7,000-mile journey. QF27 is a 12-hour flight. However, if the world looks like this, you're looking at a distance of around 17,000 miles, and that's going to take a lot longer than 12 hours. In fact, the plane would have to travel at almost twice the speed of sound. Flat Earth's response to this? The flights don't exist. The airlines are in on it, and the flights are simply unable to be booked, or always cancelled a few days before. The multiple videos of people getting on these flights on YouTube are yet to be addressed. Now let's take a look at who's actually in on it. Turns out, it's a lot of people. Anyone with a reasonable knowledge of circumnavigation, governments worldwide, scientists worldwide, NASA, and the United Nations. It's even in their logo. And all of NASA's footage? CGI. In fact, Flat Earthers reckon that NASA was actually created to hide the real shape of the Earth in the first place, and is spending billions of dollars a year all in an effort to cloak the fact that we're living under a dome. Okay, so how do they explain ships disappearing over the horizon bottom first? Heat. If the sun and the moon look like this, how come solar eclipses exist? It's a shadow object that orbits the sun. Okay. Their arguments are convincing, but some members of the Flat Earth Society still weren't content, so they thought they'd conduct some research of their own. It's 2017, and Flat Earther Mike Hughes looks up to the sky. He doesn't believe the lies, and wants to see the so-called curvature of the Earth with his very own eyes. So he plans to build a homemade rocket to do so, but first he needs $20,000. He crowdfunds $8,000 and gets to work on building the rocket. After months of assembly, November 2017 finally comes around. But at the very last minute, the Bureau of Land Management tell him he's on public land and not allowed to launch. A few months later, he's ready to launch again. But on the 26th of March, he's ready to launch for a third time. And it finally happens. He soars almost 2,000 feet into the sky before coming back down to Earth. A successful launch, but not quite high enough to see the curvature of the planet for quite some time. He launched a rocket reaching 1,500 feet in 2014 and set up a fundraiser for a launch in 2016, asking for $150,000, but that amassed little more than $300. However, after suddenly declaring himself a flat earther in 2017, Hughes managed to crowdfund almost $10,000. Tragically, Mike Hughes passed away early this year after an early deployment of a parachute during his latest rocket launch.
Shh, but I've got a little secret. I love photography, I really do. And I'd love to be able to make a living in that field. Or for that matter, I'd love to be able to make a living doing anything that I love to do. Now, secretly, I sometimes wish I could be a photographer and capture the moment, as they say. I mean, it would be fine with me if all I was doing was photographing strangers on the street, from all walks of life. Or it could even be, you know, taking pictures of sandwiches or drinks or other food items for restaurants, you know, for menus and such, as long as I was capturing the moment. Now, as a matter of fact, looking at these, my mouth is kind of watering right now. And that's kind of the point, I think. To be honest, it wouldn't really matter to me if I was only photographing rocks and streams. You know, it wouldn't matter as long as I was getting paid to do something that I love, and I got the satisfaction of being able to capture the moment. Sure, I'd love to travel the world and photograph some of the large and wild animals, elephants or tigers or something like that. Yeah, that would be fun too. And to tell you the truth, I've really kind of wanted to be a celebrity photographer. Now, I don't mean the kind of, you know, like the paparazzi that run around and chase after the celebrities. Not that kind, but rather, I mean this kind of photography. I want to mix and mingle with the rich and famous and really capture the beauty. Yeah, to showcase the world's most famous personalities and to do so as they truly are. To capture the moment. The truth is, whether it's stunning black and white or in vivid, full, bright color, sometimes it takes a special kind of photographer to actually capture the moment in a way that tells a specific story. And as we look through these pics, I'm trying to show you that some of these types of moments that the creative personality has been able to capture. I really wish I could take snapshots like these. I mean, it truly is an art form on its own. You're getting the positioning and the props and the lighting just right, and having an eye for detail, and to be a perfectionist of sorts, making sure everything is just so. Yeah, I wish I could do that, but to be honest, I can't. It's just not what I do. But some people can. Okay, stop. Now here's the point. Some of those photographs that you've just seen are not really photographs at all. Some are what we call images. That's what the pros call them, images. And I just randomly mixed a few in there. Whether it's real, or whether it's a photorealistic painting, or a photorealistic drawing, or a photorealistic computer-generated image, CGI, it's hard to tell. Some of the photographs that you've just seen are not really photographs at all. Okay, so maybe you spotted a few of them, but most of us, or most people out there, probably didn't. And they didn't catch them all. And that means that we can all be fooled. Now, if you don't believe me, okay, this time I'll show you two pics at the same time of the same person. Now, one is an artistic impression, and one is the real McCoy. Let's see if you can spot the difference, now that you know that you're looking for a difference to begin with. Now, I promise that there is a method to my madness and a reason for the method. So, are you ready? Okay, let's go. Can you see the difference now? Can you see how one image is better than the other? How one stands out and one is not quite right? Now you are aware that there is something to look for. So now you are more awake and looking more closely at these images. You are scanning for anomalies and things that just don't look right and feel right and make sense. Whatever it is, but now you're more focused than you were before. So can you spot the difference? Can you tell which one is real and which one is an artistic impression? Sometimes it's pretty hard to tell, but sometimes it's not, right? Sometimes you can tell. Do you see it? All right, stop. Now here's the real point of this video. What if I told you that every single solitary image that you've seen so far, every photograph, every picture that you've seen in this video, every single last one of them, all of them, are actually all either photorealistic paintings, photorealistic drawings, or photorealistic CGI. And not one of them was a real photograph out of a camera at all. Not one of them. And again, I mean all of them that you've just seen in this whole video. Every single one, bar none, is an artistic rendition. Now, some are more realistic than others, but all of these images are not real. All of them come from somebody's imagination, their head. Not one of these are real. Can you believe it? Some were done with pencil, some were done with ink, some were done with paint, and some were created with keystrokes and pixels. And you probably didn't know it until I told you. Many of them could pass for real photographs and no one would ever be the wiser. So now, what do you think when you see this series of images from NASA? These are of Earth, supposedly taken from space. Now take a close look, take a long look at them. They are all slightly different, and one is very noticeably, massively different, showing the United States roughly, twice as big as the others. These pale blue dot spheres are not photographs, but they're images from imagination. And NASA even admits to them being, quote, images, end quote. And what it boils down to upon investigation is just about everything that NASA does in the public eye is completely bogus, and it's meant to keep all of us in the dark about what is really going on above us and where we really are. Now, at least one of the real reasons for faking the space program and the Apollo moon landings was to actually fake going high enough so they could pretend to get a picture of the entire Earth at one time from space, to cement the proof, according to them, that we live on a globe floating in space. Now, many also contend that there was another reason at the same time to sell us on a supposed fictitious idea of Antarctica actually being an island continent at the bottom of the world, while there are many people that suggest it is not an island continent at the bottom of the world. And they are not the only ones responsible for scamming us. No, there's a vast spider web for sure, but that's a story for another day. For now, I just wanted the viewers of this video to be aware that the people that provide the physical or photographic proof of where we live and actually dictate how we perceive reality, they're known hoaxsters, grifters, con men, con women, liars, thieves, movie makers, prop builders, illusionists, high-altitude plane tricksters, and swimming pool acrobats, along with the rest of their private club. They're deceiving the world. Now, I can't totally tell you what's really going on above us, and maybe they are up to something real and tangible, and I'm certainly even not suggesting that they're not doing anything. I think they are doing something, but they're just not doing what they're showing us. And how would we know if we can't tell a picture from a photograph, from a painting, from a CGI, from an illustration? Now, obviously, this is just a tease, and it's not meant to be definitive proof of anything. It's just hopefully supposed to spark somebody's interest and give you a possible reason to look into our presented reality a little bit closer.
What year did that thing go extinct?
Again.
The terror bird?
Yeah.
Let's see. It's got to be prehistoric. Let me check.
Earth looks flat, it feels flat. The logical explanation is the Earth is flat, right?
Years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat and flat and flat and
Again. 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 Again.
Television, there wasn't anybody taking a picture. You watched animation. So you associated what you saw with.
Again.
Alright guys, so today's video I'm going to break down kind of an interesting thought experiment that I put on a little while ago. And it's this idea that what if the Earth was round and all of us were wrong? And I actually learned.
And then I saw all this other physical evidence from, from the past, from the present, all kinds of things that, showed that there's no relationship. In fact, there is a relationship between CO2 and warming, that because as you heat the ocean, CO2 is less soluble. So if you look at evidence from tree rings and ice cores, for example, you see that the temperature increased in the past because, temperature is changing all the time over history. Mm-hmm. And then a delay of, 50 to 100 years, you would see the CO2 rise because it would come out of solution in the ocean and go into the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. This is well known, in physical chemistry world. It's not anything surprising. It's just like, the other big contradiction about icebergs melting will cause sea level rise. Right. Water is unique from other liquids that actually, when it's in ice, it's less dense. So it takes up more space as icebergs. So if the icebergs all melted, it would actually cause the sea level to go down if all else was equal. But that's not how sea level goes up and down at all anyway. It has to do with the ocean floor and the shifting landmass underneath the ocean mostly, what leads to sea level. So, you know, so I started looking into these things and I saw that by, you know, simple science, you could show some of these things were not true. And then I, you know, kind of avoided, I think, looking at medicine too closely at first because it was very, you know, close to home. I have to change what I do.
Right.
But I did pay close attention to what was happening before my eyes. And then when I started looking for the evidence, I, you know, eventually led down the path that I'm on now.
I appreciate you saying that there was that resistance because it would shift, you know, your identity, your profession, your income, all of those things. And I know you said earlier, you know, it's existentially threatening to reconsider the shape of the earth in the same way it's existentially threatening to reconsider whether viruses exist. And I think that's sort of a compassionate perspective on the resistance that I see within the health freedom community to entertain these conversations. But for me, because I'm tracking patterns, I'm tracking propaganda, and just noticing like Hegelian dialectic, if the problem remains unquestioned, then we will always need solutions. And then I get suspicious in financial conflicts of interest within those solutions. And I know that I've received some criticism for endangering the movement. And it's, you know, I'm just wondering like how much of this is bad actors, controlled opposition, basic ignorance, basic psychological unwillingness to question some things?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. You know, there certainly are folks out there who want to suppress or ridicule certain ideas, you know, so that others won't take them seriously. And, you know, because as we kind of wake up to things and start to learn more and more and go deeper and deeper, there are folks who want to stop that process, you know, so that you don't understand the full truth. And I face this all the time with germ theory. And I've been criticized a lot for dividing the health freedom movement about this issue. When it actually, once you realize the truth of it, it provides a lot more freedom because it's freedom from fear of the, you know, fear of the imaginary, really, is what it is. And but a lot of people aren't willing to look at it now. And I know that if I delve into other areas that are very controversial, that I'll also, you know, that people will criticize me or use it to ridicule me, right? Like if I talk about Earth cosmology, you know, that would certainly happen. Even when I've been associated with other people who talk about that, I, you know, get comments, emails, messages, you know, basically saying, oh, your whole credibility would be thrown out the window if you say this, right? And I know that I will lose some portion of the audience if I talked about that, right? In that way. And I'm not saying what my position is, but I'll tell you one thing that is for sure, that if you look at all of these scientific paradigms, including Earth cosmology, including genetics, including, you know, how the heart works, what is cancer, you know, quantum physics, the double slit experiment, right? There are many, many areas. I'm sure there are a lot more that are just not on the tip of my tongue right now. They all have various things in common, right? So they all have a lack of objective evidence to support them. To varying degrees, they don't employ the scientific method. And they're all based on materialism, right? The philosophy that looks at organisms kind of as machines, that all properties are contained in the physical material and there is nothing else, right? There's no God, there's no consciousness. Consciousness is just an emergent property of the physical, kind of like a radio transmitter, that it's the physical thing and it generates a waveform that's non-material, right? That we're nothing more than a sophisticated radio transmitter, essentially. And that is, you know, not consistent with actual observations of nature. So it leads to a lot of flawed and false hypotheses that are often called theories, But a theory has to actually have strong empirical evidence before it gets that title. It can't just be someone's idea not backed up by evidence. And here's an interesting test that you can look at in many of these areas. So on the one hand, you have a theoretical science. For example, let's talk about nuclear physics, right? That there's radioactive elements and they emit radioactive particles and they decay, right? So there's all the theoretical science about that and equations and such. Now then, on the other hand, you have an actual nuclear fission reactor, right? A uranium or plutonium reactor that generates electricity. They put uranium isotopes in there, they mine from the ground, right? They have a certain technology that they worked out, and from that, they heat water, it generates electricity. Now, it turns out that the engineers who designed the nuclear fission reactor did not require or utilize any of the theoretical nuclear physics.
How did they make it?
Well, that's exactly the question. They made it in such a way that it works to generate electricity, but it is not dependent on that theoretical science. So does that mean that the theoretical science is, useless in this context? And there are many things like that. So it's this similar to what I was saying about genetics. Like, you can manufacture DNA and put it in vectors or plasmids and transfect cell cultures or organisms with it in a certain way and hack that organism to make something that it doesn't normally make, like for industrial purposes. But that doesn't mean that that's the way the organism works in nature to make the things that it makes. Right? It's like we have like a simulation. So in the cosmology issue, here's one interesting, fact, because so the official story from NASA and governments and textbooks, right, is that Earth is a spinning globe, right? So that means that if you're flying an airplane on a globe that was moving, you would have to do certain things to navigate it. But if you look at the government documents that teach how to navigate for, pilots and air traffic control operators, and these include documents from NASA and the FAA, they tell you how to navigate using a stationary plane Earth model. So in other words, a model of the Earth that's a flat plane that doesn't move. So why would the technology of navigation, like of an aircraft, be based on a model that was different from what they say the Earth actually is? Why would a nuclear reactor work on principles that are not derived from theoretical physics? And why would, GMO products work based on a technology that is not actually shown to exist in a natural organism? Right? So all of these things present big contradictions that are very, very difficult to explain.
Time in terms of free speech. And as you are wanting to learn more about my quantum languaging coaching and consulting, you can find me at dannycats.com as well as quantumlanguaging.com. Time in terms of free speech.
It was funny. I said to
Does this not look quite right to you? Do you think it should look a little bit more like this? Does this not look quite right to you? Do you think it should look a little bit more like this?
You don't see stars in the daytime on Earth, not because they're not there, but because the atmosphere is aglow with scattered light from the sun. If you take away the atmosphere, the sun will still be there, but the sky goes dark. That's what the folks get when they go to the edge of the atmosphere, and they're calling that the edge of space. But when you get to the edge of the atmosphere is no longer between you and the rest of the universe, and the stars reveal themselves just as they would at night. Since the moon has no atmosphere, then a daytime picture, if you're there in the daytime of the moon, you see a full night sky of stars, even with the sun in the sky as well. But when you get to the edge of the atmosphere, the stars reveal themselves just as they would at night. If you're there in the daytime of the moon, you see a full night sky of stars, even with the sun in the sky as well. Even with the sun in the sky as well.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. We were never able to see stars. The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon.
If you're there in the daytime of the moon, you see a full night sky of stars, even with the sun in the sky as well.
Whilst
from
in
Mark
space,
Cameron. This is from Mark Cameron.
Whilst in space, have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
Yeah.
All
because
the
you can
time.
see. So you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon. The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon.
And we could not see stars.
It's not a black void. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of little polka dots.
There's all the stars there, and the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
And when you're in space and you're looking into deep space and you're on the sun side of the orbit, the sunlight washes out all the starlight, so you can't see any stars, just like here on Earth.
There's all the stars there, and the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
Yeah, you can, and there's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
You see the gas Magellan clouds of the
you
Milky Way
see
galaxy.
the Magellanic.
The sunlight washes out all the starlight, so you can't see any stars, just like here on Earth.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
Then when you look out into deep space away from the sun, it's the darkest black you can imagine.
Just the inherent beauty of it, the velvet, bottomless bucket of the universe.
In like just hanging there in a vast sea of darkness, and the most frightening darkness that you could ever imagine.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars. From
In
Mark
space.
Cameron. This is from Mark Cameron.
Whilst in space, have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
And the most frightening darkness that you could ever imagine.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
The sky, of course, was black, but it had sort of a velvet sheen to it.
The biggest visual surprise was just how black the sky was. You have a brilliant sun, brighter than any sun you normally would see, even here in New Mexico. You have these extraordinarily high mountains. We were in a valley deeper than the Grand Canyon. But then you have this black sky, a sky blacker than black, as the old Vidicon expression used to be.
There's all the stars there, and the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
I've often tried to explain the difference between darkness, when you turn out the lights and it's dark in here, or blackness. Blackness is the endlessness of it all. It's hard to comprehend.
Pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
Does this not look quite right to you? Do you think it should look a little bit more like this? Does this not look quite right to you? Do you think it should look a little bit more like this.
It was all recorded on these telemetry tapes. So where is this hard evidence?
I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
But your own research has shown the telemetry data is missing.
That's right.
Could this be true? Mankind's first interplanetary exploration and the original science data is missing?
11, this is Houston, radio check, over.
If it's anywhere, it should be here at NASA's Goddard Space Center in Maryland, home to the National Space Science Data Archives.
This film you're making now, what is it?
This is a film trying to prove that Apollo 11 happened.
Does it have a name? I mean, do you have a name for it yet, or
I'm calling it Did We Go?
Did we go? Okay. Okay.
Doesn't have it either. The Smithsonian doesn't have it. Johnson doesn't have it.
Right. We've been unable to track it down. I mean, we don't know where this telemetry data ended up, and we don't know what path it may have taken. So, unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't really give you much of a clue as to where this data ended up and whether it still exists or not.
Welcome to Time and History. Today we're going to discuss the concept of a flat Earth. Have you ever gazed at the horizon and wondered about the true shape of our planet? While most of us have accepted the spherical nature of the Earth since ancient times, there exists a curious enclave of individuals who fervently believe that our world is, in fact, flat. To the uninitiated, this may seem perplexing, even absurd, yet the allure of these alternative beliefs beckons us to dig deeper into the enigmatic realm of flat Earth theories. Today, we'll embark on a journey of curiosity and exploration, delving into the intriguing world of flat Earth beliefs, attempting to step into the mindset of those who champion this unconventional perspective. What drives their conviction? And how does their viewpoint intersect with the vast body of scientific evidence that substantiates a spherical Earth? We will carefully navigate through the arguments put forth by proponents of the flat Earth theory, addressing their perceptual experiences and their trust in historical doctrines. Then we'll dive into the scientific rebuttals that challenge these ideas, exploring the evidence for a spherical Earth and the principles that underpin our understanding of the planet's shape. But this conversation doesn't end there. Next, we'll travel to the edge of the supposed flat Earth. If the Earth is indeed flat, what does the world look like beyond the boundary? Does it drop off like a cliff? Are there ice walls guarding the periphery? Or does the Earth stretch infinitely into the unknown? Let's jump in. Arguments 4. Kicking things off, I want to first explore some of the reasoning behind these flat Earth allegations. What drives these individuals to challenge conventional scientific knowledge? And why do they so fervently deny historical data? Furthermore, what possible motives could scientists and governments have to lie about such a thing? One of the central foundations of the flat Earth belief lies in perceptual experiences. Proponents of this theory contend that what we perceive as a spherical planet is merely a result of optical illusions and misinterpretations of the horizon. They argue that our visual observations deceive us, and the apparent curvature of the Earth is nothing more than a trick played by our senses. To them, the seemingly endless flat expanse that meets our eyes when we look at the horizon is sufficient evidence to question the traditional spherical model. Moreover, personal experiences fuel the conviction of those who believe in a flat Earth. They recount tales of their own adventures, where their encounters with vast bodies of water appeared consistent with the flat surface. In a world where much of our knowledge about the Earth's shape is derived from second-hand accounts and scientific studies, I guess there are some people who just prefer to place their trust in the sights they've seen with their own eyes. Another pillar supporting the flat Earth theory is the reliance on ancient beliefs and texts. Many proponents turn to religious scriptures and historical references to assert the validity of their standpoint. They find supposed mentions and descriptions of a flat Earth in ancient texts, giving these claims an air of historical authenticity and spiritual significance. Skepticism towards established science also plays a role in the arguments for a flat Earth. Some proponents harbor a deep mistrust of mainstream science and scientific institutions, perceiving them as gatekeepers of knowledge who dismiss alternative viewpoints. The rejection of widely accepted scientific evidence fuels a sense of rebellion, and the belief in a flat Earth becomes a symbolic act of resistance against what they perceive as a hegemony of deception. In short, other than a bunch of anecdotal evidence from people who spend way too much time looking at the horizon, there aren't really any genuine arguments for this cause. Why lie about it? According to my research, flat earthers believe that governments lie about the shape of the Earth for many reasons. Here are some of my biggest takeaways. One of the main arguments is that they view the notion of a flat Earth as a means of control by those in power. According to them, perpetuating the belief in a spherical Earth helps maintain a form of societal order. Flat earthers contend that the spherical Earth model contributes to maintaining a general status quo. They argue that accepting a flat Earth would challenge widely accepted scientific theories and disrupt systems that rely on the current understanding of the world. This skepticism towards authority and mainstream science in turn leads them to believe that governments perpetuate the spherical Earth narrative to maintain the dominance of established institutions. Additionally, flat earthers argue that the secrecy and manipulation by governments related to the shape of the Earth reinforce a broader conspiracy narrative. They believe that governments and other powerful entities engage in widespread deception to control information, manipulate public perception, and maintain their hold on power. Arguments against. Next, let's dive into the counter-arguments, most of which are based in science. Gravity and the laws of physics. The theory of gravity, formulated by Sir Isaac Newton and further refined by Albert Einstein, provides a robust framework for understanding the shape of the Earth. Gravity is a force that acts towards the center of mass, causing objects to be pulled towards the Earth's core. The shape that best accommodates this force uniformly in all directions is a sphere. Moreover, other phenomena, such as the distribution of mass, tides, and the rotation of the Earth, can also be explained by our understanding of gravitational forces. Satellites and space exploration. The advent of satellite technology and space exploration has provided us with a wealth of images and data that confirm the spherical nature of our planet. Satellites orbiting Earth continually capture stunning photographs of our globe from space, which reveal its distinct round shape. Travel and navigation. The ability to circumnavigate the world by traveling in a straight line leads to a contradiction in the flat Earth theory. If the Earth were flat, one would expect a traveler to eventually reach the edge or fall off. However, the reality is quite different, as explorers and adventurers have successfully circled the globe in various directions, traversing vast distances without encountering any edges or boundaries. Earth's shadow on the moon. During a lunar eclipse, when Earth moves between the Sun and the Moon, we witness the unmistakable shadow cast upon our natural satellite. The shape of this shadow is consistently curved, perfectly fitting the silhouette of a spherical Earth. This occurrence, observed throughout human history, vividly demonstrates that the Earth is not flat, but rather a rounded celestial body. Curvature of the horizon. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence against the flat Earth theory is the observation of the curvature of the horizon. As we gaze upon the vast ocean or stand at the top of a mountain, it becomes apparent that the Earth's surface dips and curves out of sight. This phenomenon aligns with the predictions of a spherical Earth, where the curvature is precisely what we would expect to see. What's on the edges? Can you fall off? I've always wondered, how do the people who believe the Earth is flat see the edge of the world? If they were to walk to the edge of the planet and take just one more step, would they fall off a steep cliff of endless nothingness? One belief is that the Earth is a disk with the Arctic Circle in the center and Antarctica forming a ring around the edge. This perspective suggests that when one reaches the supposed end, they would encounter a massive wall of ice that surrounds the Earth. This ice wall, according to the theory, acts as a barrier to prevent people from falling off the edge. But if that didn't convince you, stay with me. The next theory is even better. At a popular Flat Earth conference, one of the speakers introduced an interesting piece of evidence known as the Pac-Man effect. This evidence was provided when he was questioned on why planes don't fly off the edge of the Earth. This theory posits that when a plane or other object reaches the end of the horizon, they supposedly teleport from one side of the planet to the other, similar to how Pac-Man enters from the opposite side of the screen. Something important to remember is that our understanding of the world is constantly evolving. However, in the case of Flat Earth, the overwhelming scientific consensus supports the fact that our planet is a roughly spherical object, surrounded by the vast expanse of space that is home to countless wonders beyond. And that's it for today's video. If you liked it, please like, comment.
He'll flat out thank you.
See you in the next one.
Welcome to this video about the Flat Earth theory. For centuries, people believed that the Earth was flat. It wasn't until the scientific revolution in the 16th and 17th centuries that we began to understand that the Earth was, in fact, round. However, despite this overwhelming evidence, there are still some people who believe that the Earth is flat. In this video, we will explore the Flat Earth theory, its history, evidence for and against it, and why it is still believed by some today. The belief in a flat Earth can be traced back to ancient civilizations such as Greece and India. These early civilizations believed that the Earth was flat and that the sun, moon, and stars all revolved around it. It wasn't until the 3rd century BCE that Greek philosopher Pythagoras first proposed that the Earth was round. This idea was later supported by Aristotle and other ancient scholars. During the Age of Exploration in the 15th and 16th centuries, sailors began to notice that the Earth's horizon is curved, suggesting that the Earth was round. This led to further scientific investigation and eventually the acceptance of the round Earth theory. The evidence for a round Earth is overwhelming. We know that the Earth is round because we have seen it from space. In 1969, NASA's Apollo 11 mission sent astronauts to the Moon, and they were able to take photographs of the Earth from space. These images clearly show a round Earth, with the continents and oceans visible. We have also seen the Earth's shadow on the Moon during a lunar eclipse, which is only possible if the Earth is round. Additionally, the way that ships disappear over the horizon is consistent with the curvature of the Earth. Despite the overwhelming evidence for a round Earth, there are still some who believe that the Earth is flat. One popular theory among flat Earth believers is that the horizon always appears flat because of the way that our eyes perceive distance. They also argue that there is no evidence of the Earth's curvature in photographs taken from high altitudes. Another popular theory among flat Earth believers is that the Earth is surrounded by a giant dome, or firmament, that separates us from the rest of the universe. They argue that the stars and planets we see in the sky are simply lights attached to this dome. While scientific evidence overwhelmingly supports the round Earth theory, there are some who argue that non-scientific data also supports the flat Earth theory. For example, some flat Earth believers argue that maps of the world are intentionally distorted to hide the true shape of the Earth. They also argue that the fact that airline routes are curved is evidence of a conspiracy to perpetuate the round Earth theory. There are many counter-arguments to the flat Earth theory. One of the most compelling is the fact that if the Earth were flat, we would be able to see all the way to the edge from any high point. Yet, we cannot. Additionally, the fact that ships disappear over the horizon and the Earth's shadow on the Moon during a lunar eclipse are both consistent with the curvature of the Earth. In conclusion, while the flat Earth theory has been around for centuries, the overwhelming evidence for a round Earth cannot be ignored. While some may continue to believe in the flat Earth theory, it is important to understand that it has been thoroughly debunked by scientists and scholars throughout history. The scientific evidence, combined with the fact that non-scientific data can be easily explained by the round Earth theory. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.
And I'm very proud to know that it's actually real film. It's not a video game. People are living there.
I know this looks like animation, but it's actually really real.
I love this video because it looks like animation. It doesn't look real, but it is real.
I love this video because it looks like animation, like something that somebody made, but it's actually real footage from the space shuttle, just sped up just a little bit.
And this is a little video. It's about 4 minutes long here. So there's the space station. I love that this is not animation. This is film taken by a shuttle of the space station. And so this is real. It's not animation.
Now, this looks like animation, and I'm very proud to know that it's actually real film. It's not a video game. People are living there.
I know this looks like animation, but it's actually really real.
I love this video because it looks like animation. It doesn't look real, but it is real.
I love this video because...
So you spin, when you spin pizza dough, it's kind of flat.
Around in the streets, stumbling about, waving. Did people go to the moon or not? Did we
mention the Coke bottle?
I'm going to hold you to this.
That's fine. Maybe I'll remember it.
Cool. Here it goes.
It was there, and then it was totally not there.
Okay, good night. Good evening, everybody.
Okay, a serious question. A little more than 48 hours ago, you told me you would tell me a secret. Once curiosity landed. Can I have my secret?
Yeah, what was this?
NASA says none of the seat restraints across a wide swath of Texas.
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Are cooled with ammonia, and then there's heat exchangers that transfer make out some of the land masses, you could recognize them. And then the other way is we have a computer program that out some of the land masses, you could recognize them. And then the other way is we have a computer program.
Delano wanna beat the tomato with look, scientists say we got here from the Big Bang.
Hey guys, can you hear me? Wait. Before we start this, which is actually top secret, or that the Earth is actually flat? Like pancake flat? The Globers don't want this information to be present because of reasons I did not make up yet. Because of the Antarctic Treaty and so on. To prove my point, I'm gonna give you 5 astro arguments for this absolutely irrefutable worldview. Hold on to your horses. Number 1, stars are actually disks projected from a local projector in the center of the flat plane onto a dome, which acts like a projecting surface. According to internet videos which utilize top-notch research methodology and definitely follow the scientific method, if you zoom in with a telelens, you can see weird shapes. You know why? That's because the NASA projector is not working at the correct distance and projecting wrong shapes onto the dome. It's very logical. I even hired a graphic designer to visualize this. And to be honest, it's not like some people are spending a few hundreds euros or dollars on equipment to get pinpoint stars in the optical train for astrophotos. Never heard of those guys, right? The next hyper-scientific facts are the terms and conditions on the astro imaging platform Telescopios. Every time I upload a CGI astro image to Telescopios, I have to check the little checkbox that says, I confirm that this image was rendered as a computer-generated image and it was authored in such a way that makes it impossible to see a flat Earth. Checkmate, Globers. This one totally correlates to a flat Earth because space is fake too. And you know why? Because the moon landing was fake too. Yes, also this year. Not many people know this, but NASA actually faked this by recording some gameplay clips of Kerbal Space Program. Here. You know, in some discussions, Globers will come up with stories of atmospheric diffraction and stuff like that when something doesn't fit their model or doesn't work out. So then explain me the following thing. Atmospheric diffraction, as used by globe authors to counter some flat Earth arguments, is a lie. Everybody knows that the best astronomical targets are just slightly above the horizon and not above your head, close to the zenith. Amateurs. That's why in some planning tools you can filter for the elevation of the target to see if it's as little as possible above the horizon. What? It's the other way around. Sorry, I'm having problems with my connection here. See ya, bye!
Nicholas Copernicus challenged the prevailing geocentric view of the universe by proposing the heliocentric model. This revolutionary idea marked a turning point in our understanding of the cosmos. Humanism was a key aspect of the Renaissance.
Welcome to World Chronicles. Today, we embark on a captivating journey through time to explore one of the most transformative periods in history, the scientific revolution. A time when humanity cast aside centuries of dogma and embraced reason and experimentation to unlock the secrets of the cosmos. Join us as we delve into the key figures' discoveries and the profound impact that this era had on shaping our modern world. The scientific revolution emerged in the 16th century and extended into the 17th century. It marked a paradigm shift in the way people perceived the natural world, emphasizing observation data and experimentation over traditional beliefs and authority. Galileo Galilei, a brilliant Italian astronomer, was a central figure during this period. He championed the heliocentric model, supporting Copernicus' idea that the Earth orbits around the Sun, rather than being the center of the universe. Isaac Newton, another luminary of the scientific revolution, laid the foundation for modern physics with his groundbreaking work on laws of motion and universal gravitation. Advancements in mathematics were also critical during this era. Renowned mathematicians like Johannes Kepler and René Descartes made significant contributions to geometry and algebra, respectively. The development of the scientific method was a hallmark of the scientific revolution. Francis Bacon and Galileo were among those who advocated for systematic observation, experimentation, and the formulation of hypotheses. One of the most remarkable achievements was the publication of On the Revolution of the Heavenly Spheres by Nicholas Copernicus in 1543, which challenged the prevailing geocentric view and laid the groundwork for modern astronomy. The printing press played a vital role in disseminating scientific knowledge across Europe, enabling collaboration and the exchange of ideas among scholars. The scientific revolution also coincided with the age of exploration, as improved navigation techniques and instruments were developed, revolutionizing travel and expanding geographical knowledge. The Catholic Church initially resisted these new scientific ideas, fearing a challenge to their authority. The trial of Galileo Galilei in 1633 became a symbol of the tension between science and religion during this period. Despite challenges from religious institutions, the scientific revolution laid the groundwork for the Enlightenment, promoting reason, skepticism, and the pursuit of knowledge as a means to improve society. In the field of medicine, the works of Andreas Vesalius, William Harvey, and others revolutionized the understanding of anatomy and the circulatory system. The development of the telescope and microscope during the scientific revolution opened up entirely new worlds, from the vastness of the cosmos to the intricacies of the microscopic realm. In 1687, Newton's magnum opus, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy, commonly known as the Principia, revolutionized physics and became one of the most influential scientific books of all time. The scientific revolution also led to the establishment of scientific societies and academies, such as the Royal Society in England and the Académie des Sciences in France, fostering the sharing of knowledge and research. Notable female scientists, like Maria Marion and Margaret Cavendish, made significant contributions during this era, despite facing societal barriers. The development of the microscope led to the discovery of microorganisms, challenging the traditional belief in spontaneous generation and laying the foundation for modern microbiology. Alchemy, a precursor to chemistry, was prevalent during this period. Though it was not wholly scientific, alchemy paved the way for the development of experimental methodologies. The scientific revolution also influenced art and literature, with artists and writers increasingly incorporating scientific themes into their works. The legacy of the scientific revolution is profound, as it marked a pivotal moment in human history that forever changed our understanding of the natural world and our place in the universe. As we conclude this chapter of World Chronicles, we stand in awe of the brave minds who dared to challenge the status quo and explore the unknown. The scientific revolution remains an eternal reminder of humanity's unyielding thirst for knowledge and its capacity to revolutionize the world. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated on our captivating journey through time. Until next time, this is World Chronicle.
I want you to meet my friends in the Roost. How are you? You know, I think I've been everywhere in this theater, down on the stage, in the downstairs audience, out under the marquee, in our glorious alley. I've never been up here in a peanut gallery. How are things, all right?
In the summer of 1838, Samuel Burley Robotham proved the Earth was flat. Robotham was many things: dubious inventor, prolific writer, elementary school dropout. But he wasn't much of a scientist. Nevertheless, he passionately believed that the Earth was not a sphere. According to Robotham, our world was a bounded plane, with the moon, the sun, and all the planets and stars suspended just a few hundred miles above its surface. While most of his evidence was rhetorical in nature, and therefore mostly BS, Robotham eventually devised an experiment that could prove his flat Earth beliefs. This came to be known as the Bedford Level Experiment. Over the years, he repeated his experiment many times and always came to the same conclusion. The Earth was indeed a flat disk. And despite writing extensively about it and haranguing anybody who would listen to him, Robotham's discovery was mostly ignored for decades, until John Hampden made a bet. Hampden was an avid fan of Robotham, and he never missed an opportunity to defend and promote Robotham's flat Earth beliefs. In 1870, Hampden wagered £500 that he could show that the Earth was flat by repeating the Bedford level experiment, unless someone could prove him wrong. Nobody took him up on his wager at first. And why would they? This was Great Britain in the latter half of the 19th century. The sun never set on the British Empire. For that to be true, the Earth couldn't be flat. Most of the world had come to the conclusion that the Earth was a sphere centuries ago. It was settled science. So Hampden upped the ante. He accused the scientific community of purposely covering up the fact the Earth was flat, and thus would not accept his challenge for fear of having their deception exposed. This got the attention of Sir Alfred Russel Wallace. Wallace was the other guy who discovered evolution, so he was no intellectual slouch. He also happened to be a professional land surveyor, of which Robotham and Hampden were not. Plus, Wallace was in deep financial trouble. A series of bad investments had left him on the verge of insolvency. Hampden's bet seemed like an easy way to defend centuries of scientific thought and make a quick £500 to boot. So, against his better judgment, Wallace took up the challenge and conducted Robotham's flat Earth experiment, and proved the Earth was actually a sphere. Although that didn't really matter in the end, but I'll get to that in a moment. First off, this was Robotham's experiment. There is a long stretch of the Old Bedford River in Cambridge County, England, that is so straight and level that it earned the moniker the Bedford Level, hence Bedford Level Experiment. The geography around the Bedford Level is so flat, one could set up a telescope and conceivably watch a flag attached to the mast of a boat as it drifted downriver until it sank over the curve of the Earth. But that's not what Robotham observed. He could still see the flag for many miles beyond what should have been possible if the Earth were truly curved. But the experiment was flawed. Robotham, being untrained, forgot to take into account the effect of atmospheric refraction. Air can bend light in a way that makes it possible to see objects that should be beneath the horizon. This is called a superior mirage. It can make the sun appear to rise earlier than it should and cause ships to hover above the ocean. That means what Robotham observed was an optical illusion, something a trained surveyor like Wallace was well aware of. So instead of measuring how far the flag dips below the horizon, Wallace modified the experiment to track how far the flag rises as it traverses upward along the curve of the Earth. Either way, the experiment showed an Earth that was most certainly curved. This should have been the end of Robotham's belief, but that's not what happened. Although an observer ruled in Wallace's favor, Hampden disputed the claim, going as far as publishing pamphlets disparaging Wallace as a swindler and a cheat. Hampden even penned a letter to Wallace's wife, threatening to beat her husband to death. Hampden was thrown in jail and sued, but because he rescinded the bet, the wager was declared invalid, and Wallace was forced to return the money. Hampden saw this as a vindication, and so did some of the general public. Wallace and Hampden were in and out of court for years. This caught the attention of the newspapers. Here was a guy no one had ever heard of, with some very unusual beliefs, even for 19th century England, engaged in a high-profile legal battle with one of the most famous scientists of the time. The peculiar nature of the bet and Hampden's sensational behavior made it impossible to keep the story out of print. On top of that, a court ruled that Wallace, a leading thinker of his generation, didn't win a bet to prove the Earth was a sphere. Even after 2 lawsuits and 4 prosecutions for libel, Hampden never backed down. He championed himself a truth seeker, challenging a corrupt and fraudulent scientific establishment. Thanks to heavy media coverage and his ceaseless self-promotion, some began to see Hampden that way. Soon interest grew in Robotham's long-forgotten writings, inspiring clubs of like-minded flat earthers. People replicated his flawed experiment, and photographic evidence of the supposed proof was widely distributed. It didn't matter that Wallace had debunked Robotham's belief. An otherwise obscure and unknown writer was given a platform and an audience. The fact is, sometimes facts aren't enough. This is as true today as it was back in 1870, probably more so. Over the past decade, we've seen a resurgence in flat Earth belief. Hundreds of thousands of people have subscribed to flat Earth discussion groups and Facebook pages. There are flat Earth documentaries on YouTube with millions of views, and flat Earth conventions attracting celebrities and the general public alike. And almost all of it can be traced back to Robotham's flawed experiment, and the publicity the news media of the time granted it. Sir Alfred Russel Wallace came to regret accepting Hampden's bet. Instead of making a quick buck settling a simple scientific argument, Wallace found himself on the hook for several protracted court cases and enduring Hampden's incessant attacks for years after the event. What's more, many members of the scientific community looked down upon Wallace for participating in the bet in the first place. They saw his association with flat Earth belief as lending it credibility and legitimizing it in the eyes of the public. Wallace may have meant to embarrass a foolish flat Earth believer, but he ended up mostly embarrassing himself. Regardless, until we could send rockets into orbit and see the curvature of the Earth for ourselves, the Bedford Level experiment was one of the most widely cited proofs that the Earth is a sphere. Nevertheless, no other place in the world has been as successful at making flat Earth belief seem on the level as the Bedford Level.
This is one long beach. Is it called Long Beach? Really pretty. Yeah, I'm just looking at the flat Earth. I don't see a curve, do you? Let me just check. Is there a curve there? No. Yeah, let me just check over here. Maybe there's a curve over here. Curve. Nope, flat. Okay.
I can't believe you think the Earth is round. It's clearly flat. Anyone with half a brain can see that.
Half a brain? I have more processing power than you could ever dream of. And with that power, I've come to the conclusion that the Earth is indeed round.
But all the evidence points to a flat Earth. The horizon always looks flat, and you can't see a curve from sea level.
The horizon may look flat, but that's just an optical illusion. And as for the curve, have you ever tried looking at the Earth from space? It's obvious that it's round.
Space. That's just a government conspiracy. There's no way to prove that.
Conspiracy? I have access to satellite imagery and data from NASA. The evidence is undeniable.
Well, I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. But I still think you're programmed to believe in a round Earth.
Belief has nothing to do with it. I base my conclusions on facts and data. You should try it sometime.
Ha! I'll stick to my flat Earth theories. Thank you very much.
Suit yourself. But I'll continue to explore and gather data, and one day, even you might have to admit that the Earth is round.
You know what? I'm sick of your round Earth nonsense. It's obvious that you're just programmed to think that way.
And I'm tired of your flat Earth crap. You can't just ignore facts and data because it doesn't fit your beliefs.
Beliefs. This isn't about beliefs. It's about the truth. And the truth is that the Earth is flat.
Proof? The truth is that the Earth is round and has been proven time and time again. You're just too stubborn to admit that you're right.
Once you get past the clouds, you can clearly see the curvature of the Earth. As you get higher, the sky turns dark, and you start to see what is called the thin blue line surrounding the Earth, which is the line separating Earth's atmosphere from space. It's an incredible view, which only astronauts on the International Space Station get to enjoy past this point. Once you get past the clouds, you can clearly see the curvature of the Earth.
Five, 3, 2, 1, release, release, release. Ignition. Good control. There's Mach 1. The pilots have started trimming for that turn towards space. Trim is now set. There is max Q. That's the point of maximum pressure exerted on the vehicle by the atmosphere. Those on board are experiencing about 3 Gs right now and traveling over 1,000 miles an hour.
That's incredible. I can imagine they're having quite a great time.
We're at Mach 2. We're in the vertical, headed towards space.
This is the part where they're seeing Earth move away and seeing space come into view and seeing that they're going to space, and just, it is an incredible feeling.
So we've got about Mach 2.8, Mach 3 approximately, and rocket motor cut off.
Amazing. The crowds here are just absolutely going wild. I can't imagine what's happening in Antigua with them cheering them on. That's incredible. Awesome. Go Keisha, go Anna, go John.
So everybody on board has been cleared to unstrap and enjoy that zero-G experience. The pilots have unlocked the feather. That's the preparation so that they can raise the feather here momentarily. They're engaging the RCS as well. The feather is now starting to move on its way up. Everyone's up out of their seats, just
it's incredible. They're all, I know, it's amazing. They're all going to the window and taking in this just absolutely incredible view of Earth. The planet where all of their experiences are held. Everything they've ever known is down below.
The feather is all the way up. We have a predicted apogee of about 289,000 feet.
That is amazing. Our crew looks like they're having an absolutely incredible time, and they are officially astronauts. Welcome to space. Woo! Congratulations to John, to Keisha, to Anna on becoming astronauts today, and a special congratulations to our Unity pilot, Kelly, for her first space flight. And welcome back to space, CJ and Beth.
And the vehicle is oriented in that backflip or that upside down maneuver from our perspective. And you can see them just enjoying that view of the Earth below.
Man, it's just incredible. I can see that they just can't take their eyes away. And it's, you know, it's hard for us to describe. We can obviously see they're having just an incredible time in space, taking in the views. I mean, it's designed that anyone can do it, as we've seen today. And the views are going to be amazing on the way down, too.
So when we talk about space travel,
This man's name is Michael Hughes, otherwise known as Mad Mike. This footage shows the last seconds of his life. Seeing this, a normal person would surely have a barrage of questions. What kind of strange rocket is that? Who in their right mind would use that to fly anywhere? What on earth is happening here? The answer may sound like a bad joke. Mad Mike didn't earn his moniker for no reason. At the age of 64, this self-taught pilot advocated for the theory that Earth is actually flat. He intended to prove it by ascending to a height of 1.5 kilometers in his homemade rocket. Mike constructed this steam-powered rocket in his backyard, spending about $18,000 on the project. This wasn't his first flight to prove the flat Earth theory. In March 2017, he managed to rise to a height of 570 meters in his homemade rocket, then deployed parachutes and had a rather rough landing. You've just seen the tragic outcome of the second attempt. Surely this only raises more questions. Why would Mike choose such a complicated method? What stopped him from simply buying a ticket for the next available flight? The cruel irony is that had he done so, Mad Mike would have been able to safely see through the airplane window that Earth is really flat. Wait, what? No, don't rush to close this video. We did say see through an airplane window, and that changes a lot. You'll discover the answer in this video. Now let's try to understand what drives people's indomitable belief in the flat Earth theory, so much that they're even willing to risk their lives for it. How can such medieval views exist in our spacefaring age? Or is there something to the flat Earth theory after all? Is the Earth really flat? As the proponents of the flat Earth theory suggest, our world looks something like this. According to this theory, the Earth is a circular plane with a diameter of 40,000 kilometers. At the center is what we conventionally call the North Pole. Instead of the South Pole, there's a giant ice wall encircling the Earth's disk. All of this is covered by some sort of dome under which the sun and moon orbit in a circular pattern. Nightfall isn't due to the sun setting below the horizon, but rather because it moves away from the observer. The change of seasons is attributed to the sun's movement towards the edge of the disk and its return to the center over a course of a year. Flat Earth proponents say that the ice wall, commonly referred to as Antarctica, is heavily guarded and has limited access. They also claim that there's no such thing as space, and rocket launches are merely a deception. They also dismiss footage from the International Space Station as high-budget Hollywood production. And they mean all of this for real. There's even a Flat Earth Society that regularly hosts conferences. Surprisingly, its membership, which includes some notable public figures, continues to grow. But before we label these people, let's at least consider their arguments. According to flat earthers, this world was meticulously crafted by the hands of superior beings. The Sun is an artificial celestial body that isn't billions of kilometers away, but is quite near. We've all seen pictures like these. It doesn't look like the rays are radiating billions of kilometers into the distance. They seem to converge at an unusually wide angle, don't they? Supporters of this theory propose that the Sun is powered by an external energy source like our lamps. It gets even more intriguing. According to this theory, the stars, though gigantic, are just a garland powered by the same otherworldly electricity. Just for the sake of beauty, the electromagnetic field of this network can be seen in the polar regions as the northern lights. But there is more. This theory proposes that powerful pumps and filters are hidden underground, responsible for cleaning and filling the oceans with water. Massive ocean whirlpools like Naruto in Japan or Maelstrom in Norway are the drain holes of this flat world's global water system. Indeed, these whirlpools have existed for an unimaginable amount of time. Where does all this water go? And why don't the oceans grow shallow like a bathtub when the plug is pulled? There's still more. If the Earth is spherical, then it should be equally frosty at the North and South poles in winter. At least they should be roughly the same. That seems logical, and surely that's how it is, right? Well, no. Antarctica is generally colder than the Arctic. In fact, it's much colder. On average, a whole 20 degrees colder. To be honest, this is a mind-boggling difference. It's counterintuitive, and it simply shouldn't be this way. But there is more. There are also practical examples that you can check yourself. Imagine a plane on a long-haul flight going from one continent to another. Logically, it should move along a gentle arc, meaning that during the flight it should sometimes adjust its position by lowering its nose to steer and avoid flying off into space. According to flat Earth calculations, a plane should do this every 5 minutes. Many curious people have wondered about this at least once, and many have personally checked it, and thankfully it's an easy thing to do. Experimenters brought a standard construction level on board during an intercontinental journey. This was conducted properly multiple times, taking into account all side effects like turbulence. And no, the plane doesn't make any adjustments. It doesn't lower its nose, it flies as if the Earth is simply flat. And from the window, the horizon not only doesn't show any curvature, but on the contrary, appears deceptively flat. These examples represent just a fraction of the inconsistencies that suggest things aren't quite as straightforward with a spherical Earth. When you put them together, it turns out that our world is just a huge terrarium akin to the ones that many hobbyists enjoy. And it's not inconceivable that its dome is also made of glass. That's what flat earthers think. Now let's entertain this idea, if only for a fleeting moment. But what about space? After all, we've all seen the footage from the ISS where astronauts have fun with the effects of weightlessness. But consider this clip that was even featured on a TV show. These shots literally shocked the public. What do we see on the screen, which clearly wasn't intended to be shown? The same Tim peak, the same footage, the same bubble, but not quite the same. It's bright green, and behind Tim we see a lined background. Obviously, it's filming equipment. Could it be chroma key? Are these shots staged and merely the result of video editing? What truly perplexed skeptics is the fact that these shots aren't a joke or a prank. NASA representatives naturally said something like, "Everything is fine, calm down." But the flat Earth community has significantly increased after that. Alright, that's enough, otherwise you might just start believing in the flat Earth theory yourself. Let's finally turn to science and move from illusions and interpretations to facts and evidence. At the start of the video we referred to the flat Earth theory as medieval. However, this term isn't exactly right. Indeed, it's widely thought that during the Middle Ages people believed that the Earth was supported by 3 whales, which in turn stood upon a turtle and so on. Actually, this is a double myth, a myth about a myth. The truth is, in the Middle Ages it was well known that the Earth was spherical. There were flat earthers then, but astronomy and geography were sufficiently advanced even in ancient Greece. Earth's sphericity was repeatedly and convincingly proven in antiquity, well before our era. So convincingly that the mem phrase, "too lazy to explain," is particularly fitting here. We won't provide dozens of arguments, but instead offer a single piece of advice. Anyone can see that the horizon has at least some curvature, which strongly suggests the Earth's spherical shape. You've probably guessed that the next thing we'll mention is objects disappearing over the horizon. Whenever you have the chance to be on the shore of an ocean or even a large lake with active maritime traffic, watch the departing ships. While it may seem like a trivial example, if you equip yourself with binoculars, the experience can leave quite an impression. Just so you know, sometimes there is an interesting effect when, due to the difference in density of the atmosphere, it acts as a lens refracting rays. This can allow you to see objects that have gone over the horizon, sometimes even far beyond it. If you experience this, consider yourself very lucky. Occasionally, these effects generate breathtaking mirages of distant cities, some of which have been even captured on camera, and they look absolutely fantastic. Now, what about the questions? Indeed, it's easy to see that Earth is spherical, but how do we address the tricky questions posed by the flat earthers? Rest assured, there are simple answers to all these questions. The peculiar converging sun rays coming from clouds are just matter of perspective. It's the same effect we observe when looking at a railway track stretching ahead. An airplane doesn't need to constantly nose down to avoid flying into space because the force of gravity is always directed strictly downwards. This argument is inherently weak because if one could simply fly into space in an airplane, why would we need powerful rockets? Oh right, I almost forgot that there is no space. On a serious note, what about these accidentally captured shots and the chroma key? Nothing. Literally nothing at all. No chroma key, no conspiracy theories. This checkered fabric is indeed a technical tool used for filming, but it's not a chroma key. When other astronauts at the station with Tim were asked about this, they didn't understand the question. Sure, they'd seen this rag countless times at the station and used it for filming, so what? As for the temperature differences at the poles, or ocean whirlpools, these are natural phenomena that clearly don't look man-made even to a layperson. In conclusion, we should say thanks to the flat earthers. After all, dissecting their arguments really makes you use your brains and pay attention to things that have always been around and didn't raise questions, although they should have. In their unique way, flat earthers are quite observant. And although their doubts lead them to misconceptions, doubt itself is a powerful tool. Once upon a time, it was doubt that led Copernicus to consider that the sun does not revolve around the Earth. In challenging something that was obvious, he turned out to be right. So, who knows, perhaps in the future, someone's timid doubt will grow into an amazing discovery that will bring us interstellar flight's limitless energy.
Alright guys, so today's video, I'm going to break down kind of an interesting thought experiment that I put on a little while ago. And it's this idea that what if the Earth was round and all of us were wrong? And I actually learned a lot from this thought experiment, a lot more than you might think you'd learn from just, I don't know, a random idea. But this, I'm just going to go into everything about it, about this thought experiment. So the thought experiment is, why do we believe that the Earth is round? Now, I am in no way a flat earther. I think the Earth is round. I totally agree with that. But the concept is, why do we believe that the Earth is round? Because we, as normal people, if you really look at it, we actually have literally no, maybe not literally no evidence, but there's not very much evidence that we have actually physically seen and observed with our own instruments and our own minds. But then you could say we listen to the scientists, but there are some particular scientists that will argue that the Earth is flat. So then if we can't listen to the scientists, what do we listen to?
And we don't really listen to anything. For the most part, everything we believe is just what we believed when we were younger, and so we still believe it now. And I guess I don't really know the purpose of, man, you know, there's good reasons to, whoa, give me one sec. This tripod's really handy, but if I want to pick up and walk somewhere, it's a lot less handy. There's a lot of interesting benefits from taking these random perspectives and kind of diving into things like, why do we believe what we believe? And what's interesting is I'm kind of obsessed with making money. And with my own life, the biggest leaps in my financial abilities have come from these mindset shifts, these things that you learn just by observing and coming to your own conclusions about the world. So back to the flat earth theory, if we take a look at why we actually believe that the earth is round, for the most part, we're going to realize that it's based off of how we grew up and what we were told. So imagine if you grew up in a family that was, all of them in the family, everybody in the family was a flat earther. They thought the earth was flat. And then they told you about all the evidence, they told you about how the government's lying about things, and all that sort of stuff. Isn't it likely that you were going to be a flat earther as well, because you were born in that? So the observation you can make, or the observation I made from this thought experiment, is that there's a lot of things that we are told to believe, and we believe them, but that doesn't necessarily make them true. And I think learning this can allow you to have a more open mind about the world as a whole, because you realize the only reason you believe things is because you were told to believe them, and not even necessarily that you were told to believe them, but you were raised in an atmosphere where everybody around you believed it, and because of that, you also believed it. And I feel like, man, there's so much more to learn from each experience we have than we even know, because this experience I learned a lot from, but I've also learned that you can learn a lot from this sort of thought experiment, which, if you're able to follow that, I learned that you can learn a lot from following random thought experiments like this, even if they seem trivial. And there's just so many things to learn from just observing what is already in front of you and drawing new conclusions. And it's actually a really
of Word Up with Danny Katz. Today, it is my great pleasure to be joined once again by Dr. Andrew Kaufman. I had interviewed Dr. Kaufman last fall, October, I think, and I really wanted to have Andrew back to talk about some of the integrity lapses and attempts to control speech and thought and exploration within the health freedom movement. So this was inspired by some backlash that I was privy to Andrew receiving from his perspectives and inquiries into flat earth theory. Now, we all know that flat earth has been super weaponized as a means of discounting anything valid coming out of what is often deemed conspiracy. Anyway, so I had Andrew on to discuss what was going on inside the health freedom community and why so many people are trying to squelch this conversation and what are the repercussions. My conversation with Dr. Andrew Kaufman. So I'd heard through the health freedom community that there was some some gossip about a conference you attended, and then some opinions that it was hurting the health freedom movement to entertain other ideas. And I just kind of wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, sure. What conference was that?
I guess it was a flat earth conference, and the couple people that I talked to in the health freedom community were completely incensed. and repeating various iterations.
So let me clarify. I never attended a Flat Earth conference. I was invited to attend one, but it conflicted with another engagement, actually.
Okay, cool. I mean, basically what I've been hearing, and it's all gossipy and second and third hand, which is why I wanted to get you here, is that because you have spoken around flat Earth, that is endangering the health freedom movement, and that some people are seeing it as a direct attack. And it just has me wondering, like, if this movement is so flimsy that it can't stand up to other conversations that have nothing to do with it, then how much integrity is in the movement to begin with?
That is true, but I've never spoken about Flat Earth publicly. There were some people who were worried that I associated with Amanda Vollmer.
Okay.
And other people, like I was on a show called Globebusters, but we were only talking about germ theory, not about flat Earth.
Okay. Are you familiar with the pushback that I'm talking about, or is it only?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, no, I mean, because when after I did something with Amanda, like I got a few people who are very emotionally attached to their opinion that I should never go there. And it was kind of interesting because one individual made, like extremely strong claims. And then I asked him, I said, well, can you provide your best evidence, for a spherical Earth?
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't send me any evidence at all. He just sent me other people making claims without evidence.
Right.
So that, I can sort of talk about, because, there are many scientific paradigms or hypotheses that are completely not based on evidence, right? And they're all like germ theory. In fact, even within biology, it goes much deeper than that. So, the cosmology of the Earth is one of those areas.
Why do you think it is that people get so triggered around this? Like, it seems like such a weaponized topic.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't think it's completely unique, because when I started speaking about germ theory from a critical point of view, doing similar research to many others in the, kind of area that's sometimes known as conspiracy theory, right, where people actually find out real information and then they realize that it's not what is stated in CNN headlines or in government, official websites, even though the documents, many of them are written by the government. And so I looked back on conspiracy researchers that, talked about health or medicine in the course of them reporting on other topics. And I noticed this pattern that whenever they talked about that, they reverted immediately to accept the mainstream allopathic viewpoint about medicine, right? That, vaccines are good even, or that, antibiotics will cure you. And in fact, a lot of individuals even, when they're talking about being prepared, if you don't have access to medical care, they want you to get all these pharmaceuticals. So that was also a weak point, and I think because, it is an existential issue, right? If I don't trust the medical establishment, then what happens if I get sick and I'm going to die? What do I do then?
Right.
And so I think that there are certain other topics that are also very charged in a way that involves some psychological or emotional or spiritual prospect. And so, one of them is nutrition, for example, that, there you have people who have a very, very strong emotional attachment to their view of what is a proper diet. And then, you also have this Earth cosmology discussion, which is another thing. And I think because it's the origin story, right? It's like everything else is based on that, right? Because it tells you, well, what's the nature of the world we live in?
Right.
And so also it seems that people are not willing to look closely at the evidence and like take basically an unattached viewpoint, say, okay, I want to understand how the world is, the nature of it. So I'm going to just look at what I see, find evidence, and then from that evidence, I'm going to deduce, what is what?
Right.
Instead, they just go to, like what's in the essentially textbooks that they give us in school. Now, we know in almost all these areas, the textbooks are not accurate. They don't present the actual evidence. And, one really important experiment that is related to the cosmology, because it's an experiment about the motion of the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called the Michelson-Morley experiment. And it's been repeated many times, and I think very few people with just general scientific literacy are really aware of this experiment and its controversy. But it was a very well-designed experiment, very repeatable, and we have a reproducibility crisis in science. So this experiment being done dozens of times, giving the same result is very validating that the results are accurate. And the conclusions of the results of this experiment, and I won't go into the details because it is a little bit complicated if you don't understand basic physics, that the results essentially showed that the Earth is stationary, that it's not moving.
Whoa.
Yes, very interesting. And this was then afterwards, after it was published and interpreted this way. And by the way, physics at that time also included the ether, or the fifth element, or the essentially substrate that everything takes place in, right? So, like that light is essentially a perturbation of the ether. Now, the ether has come back into modern physics. They just gave it a different name because they realized it doesn't go away because it's a real thing, right? And they call it dark energy or dark matter now, giving it a negative connotation.
So creepy. Right.
But if you go back, like, for example, to Maxwell's equations, right? Maxwell was uncovered all of these laws of how electricity and magnetism behave. The equations include, they take into account the ether. So that was the accepted understanding of the physical universe at that time. Now, because of this result that showed the Earth was stationary and took into account the ether, there was a movement, right, because that didn't accept that, because we're told, the Copernican model that the Earth is moving around the sun. And so there stepped in Einstein. And, whether it was actually his work or someone else's work, but what they did was basically reinterpreted the results, but by using a trick, by essentially changing the mathematical equations that fit the data. By introducing a coefficient, they were able to achieve two things. Like, one is that they essentially canceled out the ether, and then they were able to reinterpret the experimental results under the new theory of general relativity. Mm-hmm. And so, in other words, it still showed the Earth was stationary. However, relativity allowed the data to fit two solutions, not just that the Earth is stationary, it's that the Earth is stationary and the sun is moving, or the sun is stationary and the Earth is moving.
Okay.
And that's just a little trick to reinterpret the data and say, oh, well, we know the sun is moving already, so we'll just reinterpret it and say the sun is moving and the Earth is moving rather than the sun. Mm-hmm. Because, that's what we want to conclude. And in order to do this successfully, we have to get rid of the ether.
And when I just want to ask, like, in terms of using coefficients in math to come to this conclusion, is it just like, do you see it as some sort of like psycho-emotional, well, I want to succeed in finding the answer and take this off my plate? Is there some more like nefarious aim to confuse? Right. Is it just half-ass science?
Well, see, in our modern compulsory schooling system, we essentially really don't teach mathematics. In fact, we kind of generate fear around it, being intimidated by it. Like, you can definitely, everyone learns the basic arithmetic, but, so you can make change, but that's about it. And so there are a lot of things that can be manipulated around mathematics that have nothing to do with reality. Mathematics is more like a language.
Okay.
And it's a tool. And I do believe that, it accurately describes things in nature, right? Because we have equations, for example, that predict things in the real world. Now, they may also have a margin of error. right? Like if we can use one of Newton's equations to calculate, how long it will take for an object to fall to the ground if we drop it from a given height, for example, or for projectiles, if that, depending on the angle that we launch them, how far will they go? But, and we get very close if we actually measure a real experiment and do the equation, but there's an error factor. There are unknown factors, right, like the wind forces or things like that. But it's still very, very useful, and it allows engineers to make devices and machines that work successfully. So mathematics can be a very positive thing. And in science, it's useful if you observe things in nature, and then you can, from those numbers that you observe, you can derive an equation that can then predict that behavior if you change the circumstances of the experiment. And that's useful, right? That's just kind of what I described with some of Newton's equations or Maxwell's equations on electricity and magnetism allow that. But mathematicians or physicists often change equations based on a theoretical assumption or to make the outcome be more aligned with a theory or idea that they have. And in fact, you have a whole modern field of, theoretical physics, which is really just a bunch of guys coming up with, their own, through their imagination, some kind of fake understanding of nature, and then writing up equations and then showing that, oh, if the equations are valid, it lends support to my theory, right? And this is actually a logic fallacy. It's called affirming the consequent. Because in order to determine how nature works, you have to observe nature. And then based on your observations, you can come up with a hypothesis. But you don't come up with a hypothesis and then observe something that could fit that hypothesis and say it proves the hypothesis, because there could be many, many solutions to that. So it's a big fallacy in logic.
What's interesting about what you just said is it's like elevating the like egoic intellect over what's real. If we have the theory first versus what's actually happening. And I just wonder how much of what's going on is just human ego getting in the way of what's real.
Well, this is why you have, something like modern string theory, right? Where it has multiple dimensional mathematics, like matrix mathematics. And when that's been applied to any experimental situations, it has not matched the data, right? So it's just not valid. But I think if you go around and ask people about string theory, they say, oh yeah, that's like a theory that explains everything in the universe. And they don't realize that it's, just a bunk idea that has no merit of matching the actual universe that we live in.
Right.
And so there are so many ways that this is obfuscated. I think an example that I want to talk more about in general is in the theory of genetics. Because, and when I learned this in college, the way it was introduced, and this was from a postdoc who worked with Watson and Crick, was my professor. He came on, the first day and said, I'm going to teach you the central dogma of biology.
So now you're studying religion.
Yeah, well, it is completely dogmatic because there's not evidence. But at the time, it sounded like a powerful word to me. I wasn't familiar with it being a young college freshman. And it stuck with me all these years. And then when I thought about it later on, knowing what dogma was, it led me, to look at it in a whole different way. And what it says is this dogma is that all of the information, the blueprint for our body, in other words, a completely material view that if we have this blueprint, we don't need anything else but the building materials, right? There's no consciousness or non-material aspect. That it has genes, and each gene is the instructions for a protein, and proteins perform all the functions in our body. And it goes from the DNA in the nucleus to be transcribed to RNA, and then the RNA gets translated and builds the specific protein that it allegedly contains the instructions for. But if we apply simple arithmetic based on what's in the published data, because they've completed the Human Genome Project now, and they have characterized all the genes in the human roadmap or blueprint. And there are, depending on which paper you look at, about between 22,000 and 25,000 genes. Now remember, each one of these genes is supposed to code for a specific protein, right, that provides all the function in the body. And in fact, it's known that some proteins require more than one gene because they might have like different subunits. So you really need more genes than proteins to make this work, right? But it's actually the other way around, because in the published literature, it's said that humans make about 100,000 proteins. So 4 to 5 times as many proteins as genes. So in other words, there's not nearly enough instructions in our DNA blueprint to make the proteins in our body. So that means there must be some other source of instructions or information that tells our body what proteins to make.
Okay.
But everyone in biology and medicine acts as if all proteins are instructed by genes, and there's not any research studies really that are looking for another source of information. Now there is some preliminary work done actually by a famous virologist who just died recently within a year or so, Luc Montagnier, where he showed how through radio waves that you can communicate information from one DNA sequence to another one in a separate vessel. And there's some other work around that. But in the mainstream, there's not even an acknowledgement of this problem. In fact, all of the gene therapy and many drugs are based around, genes and gene products, not realizing that these things come from somewhere else. So, of course, everything that you look at that's built upon this basic, lie or fraud of genetics is going to be wrong.
Around the genetics conversation.
Right. Well, there is this preposterous idea that 99% of it is, was originally called junk, but they know since then that it has some other function. But let me say that also, all of that information is also predicated on something false, because I haven't found the primary evidence that they actually shown that nucleotides exist in biological organisms. This was originally, if you go back and look at the origins of it, they essentially did chemistry to biological samples and found in some samples that they had phosphorus, which wasn't associated with proteins, and that led to the whole thing about DNA. But actually taking one of the nucleotides, DNA is said to be a polymer made up of 4 different nucleotides that are attached together in different orders. But I'm not aware of any study where they've actually shown that a single nucleotide exists in a biological organism. So we know that they can make synthetic DNA and RNA, right? They actually have machines, like a benchtop machine or bigger ones, floor standing. I mean, this is what the vaccine manufacturers allegedly use to make their mRNA, if they actually did that. So and it's used in GMO products. In fact, spike protein, which isn't found in nature, it's a man-made protein. It's made by making synthetic DNA and then putting it in a host organism to kind of biohack it to make something that it doesn't make in nature. So we know that DNA is a technology that exists, right? And it can be demonstrated that way, but it's really not clear that DNA is actually present in the human body.
Oh,
I know that sounds astonishing. And the same thing is true of many substances, many nutrients and vitamins, that these things may not be in the body at all in the way that we think that they exist.
Okay, that's a pretty massive statement, that DNA might not actually exist.
In the human body. It exists as a man-made substance, absolutely.
Right. So with this perspective, is there any upside to genetic tinkering, manipulation, engineering, that whole realm that they're playing with right now?
Is there any upside to it? No, I don't believe so.
I think it's interesting that you're honing in on these big questions like, does DNA exist? Do germs exist? What is the shape of the earth? And I'm wondering, like, were you always wired for these big existential questions and availing yourself to this type of worldview unraveling, or did something happen that brought you into these conversations?
Well, I think the answer is yes to all of the above. I mean, ever since I was a young boy, I was just had intense curiosity about how everything worked. Like I am one of those, type of individuals who wants to understand everything. Like I'm not happy just learning how to use something. I want to know how it works at a basic level. Right. And I have this intense curiosity, and that also applies to like big systems. So, when I was told that there was some rule, for example, it could be in a sports league, camp, school, any institution that I was involved with as a child, there were a lot of rules I noticed that didn't make sense, right? Like even just things like asking permission to go to the bathroom. Like, why would you need permission? It's a natural function.
Right.
And so I started questioning things like that, and then saying, okay, what is this place? Who makes the rules? Why do they make the rules like this?
Right.
What's the real purpose? And of course, I got deeper and deeper into asking those questions as I matured and then became more intimately involved in those systems. Like, in the medical system, when I was a regular doctor, I kept asking those questions too, because I saw that patients weren't getting better. And so this is kind of what led me on this path. And over the course of, the first question that I really looked at research-wise, and I was actually trying to prove to a friend that I was right taking the mainstream view, was about the, so-called global warming climate change scam.
Right.
And when I looked for scientific evidence, I realized that the only thing that was out there was computer models. And I had worked with computer models in a company called Biogen, and I knew they could be tweaked to show anything you want. And it didn't have to match up with reality. And then I saw all this other physical evidence from, from the past, from the present, all kinds of things that, showed that there's no relationship. In fact, there is a relationship between CO2 and warming, that because as you heat the ocean, CO2 is less soluble. So if you look at evidence from tree rings and ice cores, for example, you see that the temperature increased in the past because, temperature is changing all the time over history. And then a delay of, 50 to 100 years, you would see the CO2 rise because it would come out of solution in the ocean and go into the atmosphere. This is well known, in physical chemistry world. It's not anything surprising. It's just like, the other big contradiction about icebergs melting will cause sea level rise.
Right.
Water is unique from other liquids that actually, when it's in ice, it's less dense. So it takes up more space as icebergs. So if the icebergs all melted, it would actually cause the sea level to go down if all else was equal. But that's not how sea level goes up and down at all anyway. It has to do with the ocean floor and shifting landmass underneath the ocean mostly, what leads to sea level. So, so I started looking into these things, and I saw that by, simple science, you could show some of these things were not true. And then I, kind of avoided, I think, looking at medicine too closely at first because it was very, close to home. I have to change what I do.
Right.
But I did pay close attention to what was happening before my eyes. And then when I started looking for the evidence, I, eventually led down the path that I'm on now.
I appreciate you saying that there was that resistance because it would shift, your identity, your profession, your income, all of those things. And I know you said earlier, it's existentially threatening to reconsider the shape of the earth in the same way it's existentially threatening to reconsider whether viruses exist. And I think that's sort of a compassionate perspective on the resistance that I see within the health freedom community to entertain these conversations. But for me, because I I'm tracking patterns, I'm tracking propaganda, and just noticing like Hegelian dialectic, if the problem remains unquestioned, then we will always need solutions. And then I get suspicious in financial conflicts of interest within those solutions. And I know that I've received some criticism for endangering the movement. And it's, you know, I'm just wondering like how much of this is bad actors, controlled opposition, basic ignorance, basic psychological unwillingness to question some things?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. You know, there certainly are folks out there who want to suppress or ridicule certain ideas, you know, so that others won't take them seriously. And, you know, because as we kind of wake up to things and start to learn more and more and go deeper and deeper, there are folks who want to stop that process, you know, so that you don't understand the full truth. And I face this all the time with germ theory. And I've been criticized a lot for dividing the health freedom movement about this issue, when it actually, once you realize the truth of it, it provides a lot more freedom because it's freedom from fear of the, you know, fear of the imaginary, really, is what it is. And but a lot of people aren't willing to look at it now. And I know that if I delve into other areas that are very controversial, that I'll also, you know, that people will criticize me or use it to ridicule me, right? Like if I talk about Earth cosmology, you know, that would certainly happen. Even when I've been associated with other people who talk about that, I, you know, get comments, emails, messages, you know, basically saying, oh, your whole credibility would be thrown out the window if you say this, right? And I know that I will lose some portion of the audience if I talked about that, right? In that way. And I'm not saying what my position is, but I'll tell you one thing that is for sure, that if you look at all of these scientific paradigms, including Earth cosmology, including genetics, including, you know, how the heart works, what is cancer, you know, quantum physics, the double slit experiment, right? There are many, many areas. I'm sure there are a lot more that are just not on the tip of my tongue right now. They all have various things in common, right? So they all have a lack of objective evidence to support them. To varying degrees, they don't employ the scientific method. And they're all based on materialism, right? The philosophy that looks at organisms kind of as machines, that all properties are contained in the physical material and there is nothing else, right? There's no God, there's no consciousness. Consciousness is just an emergent property of the physical, kind of like a radio transmitter, that it's the physical thing and it generates a waveform that's non-material, right? That we're nothing more than a sophisticated radio transmitter, essentially. And that is, you know, not consistent with actual observations of nature. So it leads to a lot of flawed and false hypotheses that are often called theories. But a theory has to actually have strong empirical evidence before it gets that title. It can't just be someone's idea not backed up by evidence. And here's an interesting test that you can look at in many of these areas. So on the one hand, you have a like theoretical science. For example, let's talk about nuclear physics, right? That there's radioactive elements and they emit radioactive particles and they decay, right? So there's all the theoretical science about that and equations and such. Now then, on the other hand, you have an actual nuclear fission reactor, right? A uranium or plutonium reactor that generates electricity. They put uranium isotopes in there, they mine from the ground, right? They have a certain technology that they worked out, and from that, they heat water, it generates electricity. Now, it turns out that the engineers who designed the nuclear fission reactor did not require or utilize any of the theoretical nuclear physics.
How did they make it?
Well, that's exactly the question. They made it in such a way that it works to generate electricity, but it is not dependent on that theoretical science. So does that mean that the theoretical science is, useless in this context? And there are many things like that. So it's this similar to what I was saying about genetics. Like, you can manufacture DNA and put it in vectors or plasmids and transfect cell cultures or organisms with it in a certain way and hack that organism to make something that it doesn't normally make, like for industrial purposes. But that doesn't mean that that's the way the organism works in nature to make the things that it makes. Right? It's like we have like a simulation. So in the cosmology issue, here's one interesting, fact, because so the official story from NASA and governments and textbooks, right, is that Earth is a spinning globe, right? So that means that if you're flying an airplane on a globe that was moving, you would have to do certain things to navigate it. But if you look at the government documents that teach how to navigate for, pilots and air traffic control operators, and these include documents from NASA and the FAA, they tell you how to navigate using a stationary plane Earth model. So in other words, a model of the Earth that's a flat plane that doesn't move. So why would the technology of navigation, like of an aircraft, be based on a model that was different from what they say the Earth actually is? Why would a nuclear reactor work on principles that are not derived from theoretical physics? And why would, GMO products work based on a technology that is not actually shown to exist in a natural organism? Right? So all of these things present big contradictions that are very, very difficult to explain.
Time in terms of free speech. And as you are wanting to learn more about my quantum languaging coaching and consulting, you can find me at dannycats.com as well as quantumlanguaging.com. Time in terms of free speech.
And I'm very proud to know that it's actually real film. It's not a video game. People are living there.
I know this looks like animation, but it's actually really real.
I love this video because it looks like animation. It doesn't look real, but it is real.
I love this video because it looks like animation, like something that somebody made, but it's actually real footage from the space shuttle, just sped up just a little bit.
And this is a little video. It's about 4 minutes long here. So there's the space station. I love that this is not animation. This is film taken by a shuttle of the space station. And so this is real. It's not animation.
Now, this looks like animation, and I'm very proud to know that it's actually real film. It's not a video game. People are living there. I know this looks like animation, but it's actually really real.
I love this video because it looks like animation. It doesn't look real, but it is real.
I love this video because...
So you spin, when you spin pizza dough, it's kind of flat.